like how you demonstrated the information, it like made it stick in my brain. So that was great.
I'm happy to hear that. I'm very happy to hear that. I'm glad it's sticking. It's the most important thing, to be able to retain the information to apply to these state exam type questions. That's why you need to do these every single night, because this is how they structure the questions that you're going to encounter on your exams. Hi, ladies. How you doing?
Yeah, I could tell some of them they tried to like trip us up on them. I see what you were saying now. So yeah, that's pretty good.
Absolutely. All right, so this is how it's going to work. Put your name tags in front of you, if you don't mind. Dominique, Jose, you have, do you need, anybody need an extra? You don't have one? Okay. You can make one. Let me help you out. Cool. Make a name tag for yourself. We love you too. All right. So if you can help us out, start us off. Jose, question number one, read out the question. Tell me what you got as your answer.
Did we read the question?
Yeah. And then read out what you got as your answer.
Which statement is true regarding the use of the term realtor? I put B. All realtors are members of the National Association of Realtors. Is that wrong?
That is correct. Good job. Because to be a real estate licensee is different from being a realtor. Once you pass the state exam, you're a real estate licensee. But to become a realtor requires a membership. It's not free. It's not cheap. You can't join independently. You have to be active with a broker that has this membership. We discussed this. Dominique, question two.
The term follow-up is referred to
Yeah, and what did you get?
following on listing point made to for sale by owner.
You got which one? Return. You got A. Oh, C is in Charlie. Correct answer is actually D as in Delta. Can you? Hey, how you doing?
What the sales associated buyers and sellers after the sale.
After the sale. Keyword after the sale. So remember, it's not returning phone calls, voicemails, messages, emails. It's what you do with buyers and sellers after the sale. Okay. Tyranny, can you read out the next question and tell us what you got as your answer?
Legally entitled to appraise real property for compensation concerning a non-federally related transaction. I got A, as long as she does not represent herself as a state certified or licensed appraiser and complies with the USPAP.
That is correct. It's A as in Alpha. Good job. Any questions about this? Bruno, you want to help us out? Read out the next question, number 4, and then tell us what you got as your answer. Hi.
The field of property management has experienced growth and specialization primarily because of, I did see the increase in the number of absentee.
Yes, it's C as in Charlie, because so many owners are choosing to be absent, hence the name. There's a demand for property managers. Yeah, they buy investment property, they purchase property, don't want to maintain it themselves, so they hire a property management company. Managers take care of that on their behalf. All right, Kane, you want to read out
One you
question
said
5?
you said it was C for 4?
Yes, C as in Charlie.
Okay, thank you.
You can see my screen, right? Online, you can see my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, all right. Just making sure. Go ahead, Kane, sorry.
Real estate license are exempt from the provisions of US.
It's a good guess, but it's actually A as in Alpha Appraisals. Caroline, do you have your name tag?
I do have.
Oh, okay, all right, cool. No problem. All right. Caroline, go ahead. Number 6, appraisers.
Appraisers are paid a fee because A, to accept compensation based on the appraised value is a conflict of interest. Oh, should I like just say,
That's what you got as your answer?
yeah.
Yes, it's A as in alpha.
A.
Yes, it's a good selection because it is A as in alpha. Remember, if I gave you a percentage based on what you think the property is worth, then how much would the property be worth in that case? As much as you can estimate it for, right? $1 billion. Online, let me get some participation here. Amari, camera on, please. And Andre, camera's got to be on throughout the entirety of class, just to give you a heads up on that. You don't have to have your microphone on. You could put that on mute, but camera's got to be on. So Amari, go ahead and read out question 7.
The 5 major sales specialties do not include B, special use.
Correct answer is B as in Bravo. Good job, special use. Because we had the 5 areas of real estate that we discussed: residential, commercial, industrial, agricultural, businesses. Special use is something we'll talk about later on, but that's not something we described yesterday. That's not one of the 5 areas of real estate. Yeah, and that's why it's the correct answer, because this is a not question, which is the following is not. So be careful with that. Yeah, and that's why everybody in here speaks Spanish. Okay, just making sure. All right, question 8. Andre? Hello? Okay. We have to have our camera on, so that's telling me that you're not by the computer. Dominique, go ahead. Dominique, online?
Sorry.
There you go.
An owner of a Florida property has decided to hire someone to handle the property's license, leasing, managing, marketing, and maintenance. This person is someone in B, property management.
Yeah, you got an easy one. Good for 1 point on your exam. Property management. Good job.
Thank you.
Give me one moment. Oops. Come again? Yeah, in just a moment. I'll hook you up with a stapler, no problem. All right, so yes, 8 is B as in Bravo. Let's move on to question 9. Okay. Alinette? Alinette?
Which type of construction involves building to a buyer specification? And the answer is C, custom homes.
Yes, exactly. Just the way, they like it. I'm glad you didn't think that spec was short for specifications.
I did originally, but no, it's custom homes.
It's short for speculative. That's what spec is. That
Yeah.
means building with no buyer. So good job. I'm glad you knew the difference. Jaleesa, question 10, please.
Yes, the term dedication as it applies to development and construction refers to A, a gift of land by the owner to the local government for public use.
Yes, correct answer is A as in alpha. Good job. All right, what's the most common example of that?
Parks.
The streets within. Yeah, parks are examples, sidewalks, but streets are the most common example. All right, I'll take over for these remaining questions. If you have any concerns, do not hesitate to ask, and we'll discuss if needed. Sometimes the answer itself is the explanation, but let's continue to number 11. What type of license is required to sell or lease business opportunities for another person? Correct answer is C as in Charlie. Because there's no such thing as a business broker license or a business opportunity broker license. There's no such thing. Now, you might have went back and saw that they talked about if somebody specializes in buying, selling, leasing of businesses for others, God bless you, then they simply call them a business broker, but there's not a separate license for that. All you need is a real estate license to help people with their business transaction. 12, selecting a limited geographical area in which a real estate professional develops special expertise is C, farming or having a farm area. Yeah, C is in Charlie. Good job. Managing which type of property of more than 10 units requires a CAM license? D is in Delta, condo complex. 14, effective advertising involving developing a database of prospects to direct a specific message is called?
Target marketing.
It is target marketing. Good job. Exactly as stated within the question. 15, a broker charges a prospective seller $50 for a CMA. Which statement applies?
B.
It is B. B is in Bravo. This is permissible provided the broker does not represent as the CMA as an appraisal or represent themselves as a state certified or licensed appraiser. How'd you guys do?
Everyone is correct.
Yes, awesome. Great job. You miss a few? Yeah. Oh, the only one okay, yeah. It was meant to be. It's humbling, you know? It's like, okay, all right.
Can you go back to question number 13?
Yeah, let's do this in order. So, anybody have a question before 13?
11.
Number 11? Okay.
Can you come to third?
Which one?
Question.
Question 3. Okay, let's start with from the beginning. Number 3. Are you, as a real estate sales associate, allowed to appraise property for other people? Yeah, you're allowed to do so. What is appraisal? Yeah, estimating the value of property for others. So you're allowed to do that, right? So you can appraise. Can you charge people? Yeah, you can. Yeah, but only a flat fee, just like appraisers. It's the same rule. Now, what it's saying here is, yes, you can appraise, A, as long as you don't represent yourself as a state certified or licensed appraiser. That's a completely separate license. As a real estate licensee, you can appraise, but you can't prepare an official appraisal report. Question? Of course. Yeah.
This is the CMA.
Yeah. We'll get more into the details, the intricacies and the calculations of how that works. Because, yeah, you could just provide an opinion, like Kane is saying. Like you could just look at the MLS, oh, I think it's about whatever dollar figure. But it's a little bit more complex than that. Not so much more, but it does require a little bit more effort than that. All right, somebody had a question about 11, right?
Yes.
10? Okay, sure. Dedication. You have to know what this term means in real estate. It's the answer right here. It's a gift of land by the owner, typically the developer, to the local government for a public purpose. And as we described, what's the most common example of land that the developer is just going to give to the county? The roads within their subdivision. They build the roads for their community, but then they give away the roads so they don't have to maintain them afterwards. I mean, obviously, you're not going to have to pay taxes on that land because you don't own it. But that's not going to be a huge tax savings anyway. That's not the purpose of it. It's so they are not responsible for maintenance. They're not financially tied to this development after they sell out the entire community and have to come back and fix potholes and stuff.
Yeah, if you don't give to them, you have to do by your own.
Yeah. Unlike Disney owns everything and will not dedicate any of their property. If you know about Disney will not donate or gift property to the local government. That's why they maintain all of their own roads. If there's a problem, that's why their roads are always pristine. There's no potholes and all of these things on Disney property. They don't have to wait until they get approval they just do it themselves. They knock it out immediately. Oh, there's a pothole over there, fix it immediately. They don't have to wait for oversight and authority. Actually, well, now the rules have changed a little bit, right? Because, Celebration been gone a long time ago. Celebration was Disney, their first residential project, and it was very successful. There was a waiting list to buy these properties. But Disney sold 99-year lease agreements. It's called a leasehold estate, which you'll learn about in the later unit. All right, somebody had a question about 11.
I did.
I mentioned this. I explained this once, but let's talk about it again. To help people in the buying, selling, or leasing of businesses requires simply a real estate license. A common mistake is selecting A or B. But there's no such thing as a business broker license or a business opportunity broker license. No such thing. If in real life, once you get your real estate license, if you decide my farm area is going to be helping people with their business, helping people sell their business, put it on the market, find a buyer, then they might call you or refer to you as a business broker because you're brokering businesses. You understand brokering? You're negotiating, you're facilitating the sale, purchase, or lease of a business. Number 13, somebody had a question about 13, right? Yeah, this one is just kind of like a fun fact about the CAM license. Remember that CAM license, Community Association Management License, is a license you would get to manage an entire community of properties. It's not a popular thing. I mentioned we used to offer this class, but we couldn't fill up a class. No school can fill up a class with people that want to get a CAM license. So what were the features of it? Well, if it's for a community of at least 10 units with an annual budget of at least $100,000, but for what types of communities specifically? We talked about those. There was a list. And then we also talked about the types of communities that does not require the CAM license as well. That was in the next section below that.
A. License.
Right. Those three do not. Condo complex does require. Any community of more than 10 units, that's a requirement for when you need this oversight, this person who's going to manage that CAM license. If it's a community of less than 10 units, then you wouldn't be able to manage it with this type of license. It doesn't correlate with one another. Question?
For the apartment and commercial business, you don't need a license.
No. But a license is required if you want to manage a condo complex. Subdivision, homeowners association, we talked about that as well. If you go back to the list, you'll see it. Any other questions? And 15, okay. Yes, so check it out for the CMA, comparative market analysis. It says which statement applies. You charge for a CMA. You're allowed to do so. Actually, this is something we reviewed in one of those previous questions as well, right? Can't represent yourself as a state certified licensed appraiser, but you can charge. Got to pay a flat fee. Can't represent it as an appraisal. Any questions here? All right, let's move on to Unit 2 questions. Question number 1. A licensed sales associate may operate. What'd you get?
A.
It's B. For the broker registered as a sales associate's employer. And this is more accurate as to how they use this terminology, register or registered. What is registration for license purposes? It's something that we had to quickly go through, but it's the process of submitting information to the beeper. So there is a process of doing so, of submitting information. And it's a form, usually. And now the form is submitted electronically. So if you want to become active with a broker, a form is submitted by the broker on your behalf that says this licensee is going to be active with us. Number 2, an associate applicant is not required to comply with which requirement?
C.
C.
Yeah. Do you have to be a resident of Florida to get a Florida real estate license?
No.
No.
You can live anywhere on the planet, Abu Dhabi if you want to, and you can have an active Florida real estate license. We'll have another question about something similar. Which person does not meet the experience requirement to obtain a Florida broker's license?
D.
Correct answer is D as in Delta. Because we know the time period is accurate, right? You have to have at least 2 years being active, but not under an owner developer. That's why this person does not meet the experience requirements. You have to be active with a broker to become a broker yourself. 2 years within 5 years. 4, what information appears on the face of the license? This is an easy one. It's C as in Charlie, license number. Number 5, an associate applicant is not required to disclose which information on the license application. Do you have to be a citizen? No. Nor do you have to be a resident. 6, a real estate licensee works on a commission basis for 2 separate brokerage companies. Which statement applies or is true? Correct answer is A. You can have only one registered employer at any given time. Can you be active with 2? No. What we talked about yesterday was, is it possible for you to be active, hang your license with one, and salaried with another company? It is possible. It's not a violation of law, but it would be viewed as a company conflict, probably a violation of company policy, and they're going to terminate you, I can almost guarantee. 7, what is a Latin term for a plea of nolo? Okay. I give you the answer. Yes, it's D as in Delta. Not YOLO, but nolo contendere. Let's continue. John is, well, what did you get for number 8? Correct answer is C. Is licensed by endorsement is what they're describing here. I can almost guarantee you're not going to get that on your state exam, but it is something we briefly described yesterday. Let's move on to 9. Which event may cause a FREC to refuse to certify an individual as qualified for licensure?
E.
Yes.
B.
B as in Bravo. That's a huge red flag. Was convicted, keyword, of fraud in an insurance scam. So there's probably money involved. Scamming people, fraud, not good. 10. An applicant has held a real estate license in good standing in another state since 2019. The applicant is licensed in a state that has mutual recognition with Florida. 5 months ago, they moved to Orlando. Is this licensee eligible to apply for a Florida real estate license under mutual recognition?
A.
Didn't I give you this example? Correct answer is A as in Alpha. No, the applicant is now considered to be a Florida resident because they moved to Orlando, Florida. How many months ago?
5.
5 months ago. Is that more than 4?
Yeah.
So are they considered to be a resident? If
Yeah.
that's the case. And therefore must do everything residents do, what you're doing right now in order to get the license. Now, you had a question, Caroline, of if it was 3 months. Here's the thing. The way the question is going to be worded will dictate, right? They're not just going to say 3 months and then let you guess the rest. They said, maybe they said, will permanently move to Florida that has only been here for 3 months. So they're trying to reveal to you that there's an intention to be here longer than 3 months. And even the intention of doing so makes you a resident. So be careful with that. 11, a woman who received her Florida Sales Associate license last year. Which requirement must she complete to become a licensed real estate broker? Yeah. You have to at least complete your first renewal, which we know is the 45-hour post-license class. I know you're probably not going to like hearing this, but as soon as you pass your state exam, you need to come right back into your post-license class. I'm not telling you this because I need you to come back to Cameron Academy. I'm telling you, you're going to have to do it eventually. You have to do it eventually. There's no way around it if you want to keep your license. Because if you're late by 1 day, your license becomes null and what? As if you've never had a license. So why run the risk of waiting till last minute to do a 45-hour class when you could do it immediately and then you never have to do a 45-hour class again? Every 2 years after that, it's only 14 hours. That's a piece of cake. I mean, you do that in a day, day and a half. You know what I mean? Online. And you immediately. If you want the best advice is to do it immediately, and then you never have to do a 45-hour class with us again. Knock it out. Just watch videos, take a quiz. You don't have to take a state exam. You don't have to submit application and fingerprints ever. It's just taking a class exam. We submit your hours to the state, it stays on file, and then you just pay a renewal fee. And that's it. No. We'll talk about it today as to when they will accept your renewal fee. You can't pay your renewal fee early. You're allowed to complete your education early, and that's why I suggest that you do so that way you can get ahead of the game and you have peace of mind. I had a student in the last class. Her name is Evelise. And if Evelise was here, then she would plead to you guys. Yes. Okay. Her unfortunate story is that she waited till last minute to do the 45-hour class. It went past the time. She didn't have a good excuse for it because most people don't. And they took away her license and she had to take the class all over again. She still came back to us. So I guess that's, pat on my shoulder for making sure she has a good experience. But she pleaded to the whole class. She's like, listen, guys, what he's telling you right now, do not waste any time. Even though I enjoy taking class with you guys, I don't want to be here. I don't want to do a 2-week course all over again, submit fingerprints, application, take the state exam all over again. I already proved myself. Now I have to prove myself all over again and pay all of this money, hundreds and hundreds of dollars to start all over again. Don't let it happen to you. So it's going to cost you less money and less of a heartache. We'll talk about it today. I'll tell you the exact time you have to get it done before it expires. And we're going to learn about expiration dates in today's class, which is important to know about, even though when you get your license, the expiration date is going to be on the front. But in order to get the license, they might test you on the information, so we're going to learn about it. That way you can be prepared. A man has a North Carolina broker's license. He's not licensed in Florida, but he sells land he owns in Florida. Is this okay? So what's the answer? That is B.
A.
Do you need a real estate license to sell your own property? No. And that's why it's B. Florida law exempts individuals from needing a real estate license that are selling their own property. For sale by owner. We talked about that. 13. An associate applicant who has submitted a correctly completed application for the state license examination and who successfully passes the state exam may legally begin to operate as a licensee when the what?
D.
Yes, longest answer. It's exactly as stated. Notified of having passed the state exam. It's indicated on their website that your status is active. Anyhow, let's move on. 14. If we just mentioned this, if the post-licensing requirement, your first renewal, is not completed before the expiration date of your initial license, that license will what?
E.
Will be null and void, and you have to do what if you want to continue in the real estate business? B as in Bravo, must requalify as if you've never had a license. So don't let it happen to you. 15, services of real estate do not include?
C.
Yes, it is C as in Charlie. Any questions on that? Do you need a real estate license to sell cemetery lots? To rent a mobile home lot? No. I've had previous students. I mean, we've taught probably at least 100,000 students. And a few of our students in the past used to sell cemetery lots over the phone. So I don't know if you've ever sold over the phone like telesales or telemarketing, but they were doing that with cemetery lots. And I thought it was the oddest thing. First of all, the thing I was most curious about is, who are you calling, right? Like, who are you trying to sell cemetery lots to? Number one. And then also, how are you getting those leads? Who's giving you the leads of people that might need a cemetery lot? You know what I mean? There's like a ethical thing that probably like a fine line.
So, I don't know, real estate agents can sell, they can conduct an auction.
That was a tricky for me.
Because I had gone back and forth between C and D, but then I remembered our talk about the cemetery, so I knew it was C, but I'm confused as to.
Auction of real estate is a service of real estate. And you have to remember those 8 services of real estate, a bar sale, if you can recall. So advertising, buying, appraising, renting, selling, auctioning, leasing, and exchanging. So anyone who performs those services of real estate for another person for compensation of any type must have a real estate what? License. That's the rule. 16. Which statement best describes who must be licensed to practice real estate in Florida? Yeah, we just mentioned this. Services of real estate for another for compensation of any type unless specifically exempted by law. 17. Which individual is not exempt from licensure under Florida Statute 475? Let's break this down. Up here real quick. If you're exempt from licensure, are you required or not required? Let's just focus on that part. If you're exempt from licensure, what does that mean? You do or you don't need a license? You don't need a license, but that's not what the question says. The question says who's not exempt. So what does that mean? That means who needs a license? Why didn't they just say that within the question, right? That would be easier to understand, like which individual needs a license. And that's why I recommend you take your state exam in what? In Spanish, because there's no translation for that trickiness. And how's the question going to be worded? If you take it in Spanish, it's going to say, which individual needs a license? That's easier to answer, isn't it? It just makes sense. But the correct answer could be even more trickier. It's D as in Delta. An employee of a real estate developer who receives a salary. And by the way, you don't need a real estate license if you're paid strictly on a salary basis for owner-developer. We talked about that, like timeshare companies, for instance. But they're also receiving what? Bonuses based on their sales performance. If you want to be paid on a transactional basis, anything off of a real estate transaction, you need a real estate what? An active real estate license. That's the rule. 18. A salaried individual manages a condo building and rents units for 3-month to 6-month periods. The manager. Shortest answer, yes. Is D as in Delta. Is exempt from licensure under Florida Statute 475. Remember, you don't need a real estate license, sales associate license, for instance, to manage a condo building. You don't. Might need a CAM license. That's a completely separate license. And you can issue lease agreements, but the lease has to be 1 year or less. And it says 3 to 6 month lease periods. So yes, they're exempt. 19, a developer purchased a tract of land and subdivided the property into individual lots. The developer hired his son, who's not licensed to sell the lots. Okay, a little nepotism there. The father agreed to pay his son a salary of $200 per week. Wow, thanks, Dad. After 2 weeks, the son had only sold 2 lots. I wonder why. So the father decided to add an incentive. Uh-oh. The father promised his son after every 5th lot was sold, he would give his son a lot, free and clear. That's one hell of an incentive. So, I mean, wish I had a daddy like that. That was like a different type of daddy, though. Anyhow, after 1 week, the son had only sold 1 more lot. The son is just not good at sales. So the son quits his job to work for another developer who pays a higher weekly salary based on this information. What's true? Correct answer is D as in Delta. Both are in violation because of the incentive that was given and received. Doesn't matter if they're related. It doesn't matter. Unless the son's name is also, the son has a piece of ownership, which they never described here. It says it's just a father and son. Doesn't say they own the company together.
First, I was kind of confused, let me put first C, only the father C, the one that offered it, but since
Yeah.
he had the intent of receiving it.
Yes.
That's already wrong, right?
Yeah.
He never received it, because he never told the anonymous man.
But
Is that
he accepted.
Let me explain something to you, and this is important for you to hear. The intention of getting paid is the same as getting paid, even if you don't get paid.
Okay.
The intention of getting paid is the same as getting paid, even if you don't get paid. The promise of receiving money is the same as getting the money. As soon as you accept that promise, when you weren't supposed to, because he didn't have a license, the son, he's in violation as well. He violated the law. Even though in the end, he didn't earn the bonus. He didn't get the incentive. But it was a violation from the very beginning. Should have never even promised to pay him some type of incentive. The son doesn't have a real estate license. Unacceptable, prohibited, violation of real estate license law. Does that make sense? Be careful with that. And please don't get into this hypothetical train of thought like, okay, well, who's going to find out? Okay? Don't get into that. You know the law. You're going to receive questions on your state exam to jeopardize your ethics and moral fortitude, essentially. A lot of your exam is going to test you on your moral fiber because they want ethical real estate professionals, people who have a certain degree of ethics that have a real estate license. So they're going to throw these questions at you where you're thinking, there's no way this is the correct answer. It's just too easy. Because really it just comes down to the difference between right and what? And wrong. But they want to make sure you understand the difference between right and wrong. So they'll sprinkle your exam with these questions here and there to make sure you're an ethical real estate professional. It's not like that one question is worth more points than the next one. I'm just telling you in general, that's a big part of your exam. So it's the psychological aspect of the exam, and then there's also like an analytical and mathematical, and anyhow. FBI files reveal. First of all, if FBI knows about somebody, was it a small crime? Probably not. So that's first. And it says 6 months ago, a man worked as a broker in Georgia where he was charged with arson. What's arson? Arson is burning property. It says in a large insurance claim. So that means burning property for what? Money. If somebody was caught burning property for money, should they be working in the housing industry, buying and selling properties? No. Probably not. But that's not up to us to decide as to whether or not they're qualified for licensure. We don't get to decide. It says they let their license go. They detailed that information on the application when they applied for a Florida real estate license, but who gets to decide? It's FREC. And you'll see it's at FREC's discretion. A is the correct answer. To determine if the applicant is qualified. And they'll most likely ask this applicant to come in for an interview in front of the Florida Real Estate Commission. How often does FREC meet? We'll talk about it within today's session. Any questions here? No questions? Okay, we're going to jump into our session right now. Today is going to be units 3 and 4.
I did have a question. What was the answer for number 6?
A is an alpha. Is that what you got? Looks like it. Yes, A.
Yes, thank you.
No problem. Okay. I may not teach chronologically, and this is by design. It's on purpose, guys. So I might not start with the obvious, and today is going to be evidence of that. Today, even though we're going to cover units 3 and 4, I'm going to start with unit 4. Usually I start with the more important of the 2 units. And we cover at least 2 units within each session. Today is no different. We're going to start with Unit 4, if you can get there. We're going to jump right into our session. Is that okay? So, we'll take a break we still are making good time. We'll take a break at 6, 20 minutes. So Unit 4, we're going to discuss the various relationships that exist in our business. We can see that evident by the title and the details of the relationships that are formed in our business. We'll talk about the obvious ones and the not so obvious relationships that exist and the details of each. Starting on page 66, to set the tone on line 1, we see something called law of agency. And I want you to highlight this paragraph starting on line 2. It says, when a person, the action of a person doing what? Delegating authority to somebody else to act on his or her behalf. Creates what? What is created? A what type of relationship? What does it say? Agency relationship has been created. In our business, in our industry, if somebody delegates authority to another, what has been created? Agency relationship. Agency relationships fall within the body of law called the law of agency, and there are 3 types of law you need to be aware of. Let's go through each one, and I'll make it super simple. The first is called what? Common law. I want you to write this down. It's going to seem silly, but it's actually what they're describing is common sense law. So common law is really just the difference between right and what? Wrong. Ethical versus unethical. But then we come across, starts with the S, what type of law? Statutory law. Anytime you see statutory, we're talking about state. So this is state law. Like the 2 state laws we described yesterday, we'll see them again. Chapter 455 and Chapter 475 of the Florida statutes. We'll come back to that. And then we come across, starts with an A, what type of law? Administrative. Anytime you see the word administrative in this textbook, I want you to write this down and remember it. Administrative means what? License. So you'll see administrative penalties, administrative matters, administrative law. We're talking about license law. What license law do we know about already? Chapter what? 475 of the Florida statutes, Florida real estate license law. Anyhow, we'll come back to those. Let's move on. Just a moment ago, we said when a person in our business delegates authority to another, agency relationship has been created, right? But what are the names of the parties that are involved in that interaction? The person who delegates the authority is called a what? They're called the principal. Remember this. So the person that delegates authority to another person in our business to act on his or her behalf, that's the principal. And the person that's assuming the responsibility is called the what? It's called the agent. Essentially, what we encounter first is the relationship that exists between a principal and a agent. So what's an example of this in our business? When do you see principal agent? Here's an example. A broker is the principal. And all of the sales associates, broker associates within the office that are active underneath that broker are the what? Are the agents. So the relationship between a broker and their associates. This is one example of a principal and agent relationship. Broker is delegate. Imagine you're all my sales associates. I'm the broker. So I'm going to delegate authority to you to act in the best interest of the brokerage company. So I'm delegating authority. I'm the principal. You're going to execute. You're the agent. Let's continue on. You're going to be tested on something here. There's something that exists between a principal and an agent. Remember, they're looking out for each other's best interests. Principal delegates authority to an agent to act in the best interests or on behalf of the principal, right? We describe this as these two parties having a what type of relationship? Starts with an F. Fiduciary. Have you ever heard of fiduciary before? I know it's an odd word. Fiduciary means both parties are dealing in what with one another? Starts with a T. Look, I'm highlighting trust and confidence with one another. But I like the term that they use on line 35. Starts with an A. It suggests that they have what with one another? Allegiance or alliance with one another. Think about countries that have alliances with one another. Does that make sense? Aren't they looking out for each other's best interests? A what relationship?
Like having a fair.
Fair. Okay, I thought you said fear. I said, well, if you have alliance with the United States, then. But yes, it's fair, right? They're looking out for each other's best interests. Think of an alliance. We know countries that have alliances. We have alliances with other countries. That's what we're describing here. So that's what exists between a principal and an agent. I give you an example of this in our business. Let's continue on. God bless you. Or in Portuguese, do you say salute? Or what is it? Saúde. 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 Okay. So saúde. There you go. Ciao. Let's talk about what we have here in front of us. What you're tested on is something a little bit different. It's the opposite of a fiduciary relationship. Let's talk about, for instance, I'll give you an example. What about a buyer and a seller in a typical real estate transaction? Are buyers and sellers that interact with one another, are they dealing fiduciarily? Are they dealing in trust and confidence with one another? Buyers and sellers? Yes or no?
Yes.
The answer is absolutely not.
Oh.
Why? Do buyers and sellers have allegiance, alliance with one another? The buyer wants to get the what? Cheapest price they can. The seller wants to get the what? The most money possible. So it's actually the opposite of fiduciary. And we use a phrase to describe this dynamic. They're dealing at what with one another? It's right here, yes. It's on line 37. It's italicized. They're dealing at what with one another? At arm's length with one another. That means stay at least an arm's length away because I don't trust you. I have to keep my eyes on you. And there is a Latin phrase that we could be tested on that describes this as well. It's part of the same question. It's in bold on the next page. Do you see it? Page 67, line 3. Can you pronounce that? Yes. Caveat emptor, which translates to let the buyer beware. And it makes sense. As a buyer, be aware, be on guard. Have your wall up because you and the seller are not going to meet eye to eye. Of course, you want to transact with one another, but you don't want the same thing, correct? Any questions here? Now, going back to principal and agent, let's review. Principal is the party that's delegating authority. Agent is the party that assumes a responsibility. They have alliance with one another. Fiduciary relationship, correct? There are two types of agents that exist. So we know what a principal is, but then when it comes to an agent, there are two types. The first one starts with a G. It's called what? Yes. Anytime you see the word general, I want you to write this down. Think of some. If you see the word general in the textbook, you should think of the word some. Not all, not one, but some. To help you remember, think of a general store, like the Dollar General. It has some of everything, correct? This will help you recall. And as a general agent, you're delegated some duties, some responsibilities on behalf of the principal, while maintaining a fiduciary relationship with one another, which means alliance, correct? You're probably curious as to what's an example of this in our business. The first example should be obvious: property managers. So property managers are classified as general agents on behalf of the principal. Well, who's the principal? The owner of the property is the one that's delegating authority to this general agent, this property management company that's going to handle some duties on behalf of themselves, right? Like collecting rents from tenants, maintaining the property, notification, and so forth. But it's not all responsibility. It's not paying property taxes for the owner. It's not handling lawsuits that arise against the property. It's not all, it's not one, but some. And then we come across another example here. We already talked about this. It's the one we already mentioned. The relationship that exists between an employing broker like myself and all of you, imagine you're my sales associates, you would be general agents. That's what you'd be classified as on behalf of the brokerage company. Because I'm going to delegate some responsibility, some authority, some duties to you on behalf of the brokerage company. Not all, not one, but some. And then we come across a special agent. What is a special agent? Special agent, man. All right, so anytime you see the word special, write this down. It means specific or one. You see the word special, it should translate in your mind for real estate, specific or one. And what exactly? Well, it's one duty on behalf of the principal. Authorized by the principal, broker, owner, developer to handle a specific business transaction or to perform a specific act. So one example that could exist in our business is not common, but a property owner could be a principal and delegate authority to you, your brokerage company, to list their property for them. Find a buyer. This could be an example. So you could enter into that relationship being their fiduciary, represent them and them alone. And that's the example that we're describing here, but the one specific act is to list their property. We'll come back to this and I'll give you several more examples. All right, we're almost at break time. Let's move on to what I really wanted to get to in this unit, brokerage relationships in Florida. And if we move a little bit, well, not further down, but onto the next page, page 68, I want you to highlight this starting on line 9. In a residential transaction, as you can see, there are 3 brokerage relationship options, choices, is what it's describing here. We're going to describe each one of these choices. We're going to better understand what these choices are. The 3 relationship options that you can choose from in our business. And by understanding these 3, not just what they are, when they can be used, but also the responsibility you have depending on the relationship you select, then we'll be done with this unit. This is what's going to take up the majority of this unit. And that's what you're going to be tested on for this unit as well, understanding these 3 relationships. Are you with me on that? We'll get there, but it's going to be after our break. So we'll take a break right now. I think it's a good time. I want you to take a quick 10-minute break. Be back at 6:05. 6:05. Stretch out, grab a snack, make a phone call, do what you got to do. If anybody wants coffee, I can help set you up with that, okay? Let me know. Stapler, yes. All right, let's jump into it. Once again, those three relationships. These are your three choices. We're going to go through each one of them. They're actually on the right column. You'll see no brokerage relationship, transaction broker relationship, and the single agency relationship. And on the left, you see, depending on the relationship you select, what duties you're responsible for. We need to know this. Now, the first one, no brokerage relationship, this one sounds odd. You're hiring, just say it out loud. You're hiring me to be your no broker? What does that mean? You're no broker. You have to break it down, the terminology, so it makes a little bit more sense. When you're brokering, What does that mean? You're negotiating, you're facilitating. So if you're hired as a no broker, it means you're hired, right? I want you to write this down. Not to do what? You can imagine. Not to, yeah, you're not negotiating. You're not facilitating. Same thing. You're not even representing. There's no representation in this relationship. That's why it's called a non-representation relationship as well. You're not representing, you're not negotiating, you're not facilitating. So when on earth would you be hired as somebody's no broker? It's most likely when you're hired just to take care of specifically what within the transaction? The paperwork. And it's also known as the paperwork relationship. I like to call it the paperwork relationship. When would you be hired just to take care of somebody's paperwork? Most likely, it's when you get involved with a FSBO seller. What does FSBO mean? We've mentioned this before. Remember, if you own the property and you put a sign in your front yard, what does that sign say? Exactly. So that's what FSBO stands for. It's what we call them in our business. We call them FSBO sellers. For sale by owner, FSBO. Not Frisbee or Fizbo the clown, but for sale by owner. 1 second. So that sign that they put up in their front yard is telling you, I don't need you to represent me. I don't need you to negotiate for me. I can do it on my own. It's for sale by owner, not a real estate agent. But once I find a buyer and we negotiate a fair price, we both agree to it, I might not know what to do next. And I need you to come into the transaction to take care of the what? The paperwork, the contracts used to solidify the deal. And that's what you would be limited to only. Now, the question I get is, do I have to charge less? The amount of compensation that you make off of a real estate transaction is always what? Negotiable. So it's based on what you negotiate with that FSBO seller to take care of the paperwork. Could you charge them a flat fee if you wanted to? Sure. Could you charge them a commission still? Sure. That's up to you. But I'm just sharing with you the options. This is the first option we come up with. You had a question, Kene, first? Not necessarily. You just put for sale sign if you want. Yeah, there's not a regulation for that, if that was your question. Yes? Just work on your negotiation skills, I guess. It's whatever you want to charge. This is the best advice I can give you, because every brokerage company is going to provide some additional guidance on it. Just lean on your broker and say, hey, listen, what would you charge? And then just follow their instructions. I mean, that's the person that you're supposed to go to when you come across these dilemmas. Like, I don't know, if I'm just going to take care of the paperwork, should I charge them $500, $1,000? They'll be able to provide some additional advice. Yes. Contract, sale contract, contingencies, appraisal contingency, inspection contingency, understanding all of those conditions that go into a real estate transaction. Financing contingency, are they getting financing? Does the property need to appraise for the amount they're offering? Otherwise, the buyer might be able to walk. How much of a deposit? The contract outlines all of that. When's the closing date? So we could talk about it, but it needs to be in writing. And you might get a real estate agent to help you with that. And this is the type of relationship you might have with them. And that's what they're limited to. Question. Seller financing? Well, you don't want to draw up any type of financial documents as a real estate agent. Don't do that. Have a lawyer do that. Kene. It's not normal. It's not a common thing. Depends on how you look at it. Depends on how you look. The rule changed recently with compensation for buyer's agents. So yeah, maybe dealing directly with the seller and not having to pay a buyer's agent to help you out with the transaction. That might work out, but it's all circumstantial. Sometimes you can negotiate for the seller to pay the commissions to you, even though the buyer is supposed to be responsible for it. We call that like a contingency, an additional contingent, a seller's contingency. But anyhow, if you choose this relationship out of the three options, there are duties. You'll notice it has the least amount of duties out of all three relationships, and you can understand why if you're just limited to taking care of the paperwork. Think of the acronym ADD. This will help you remember the three duties, but you have to remember these three. You could be tested on it, I can almost guarantee. And the first one, it goes without saying, accounting for all funds. But you might not know what this is. What's the only money that you could possibly see and be responsible for as a real estate agent in the transaction? What check? What property check? You're close. I feel you're very close. When an offer is accepted, both parties are under contract. Usually the buyer gives a what? A deposit. Goes by a few other names. It might be called the EMD, earnest money deposit, good faith deposit, escrow deposit, whatever you want to call it. And that might be given to you, the real estate agent, to hold in trust. How do you handle that money? We'll talk about that in a later unit, but that's the money that they're referring to. That's the only money you could possibly see and be responsible for throughout the duration of the transaction. Now, the next one, once again, you could just highlight, read it out, and it makes sense. Deal honestly and fairly. Doesn't need any further explanation. But the next one does disclose all known facts that affect the value of residential property. What are we describing here? And I want you to take a note of this. What they're saying is all known, latent, write that down. This is the terminology they'll use. Latent means what? Hidden, material defects. Yes, we're talking about physical problems with the property, not like a lien attached to the property or title issues. We're talking about physical problems. What we're saying here is, and you'll notice these three duties are consistent on all three relationships. Do you see that? It's across the board. So it applies to the next two that we're going to describe. But what does that actually mean? Anything you know about the property, no matter how small the defect, if you have knowledge of it as a real estate professional, you're supposed to what? Disclose, inform, make knowledge of, right? So an example, and we're talking about latent, hidden defects, right? Let's see if you guys are paying attention. There's a big hole in the wall. The buyer walks past it, doesn't say anything. Must you bring that up to him? Hey, by the way, there's a hole in the wall. Yes or no?
No.
No,
The answer is no.
because it's obvious.
They can
it's
see
not
it.
a
Hidden defect.
latent or hidden defect. Exactly. You could, but I'm saying, like, what is required? Is it required for you to inform them of something that they can see for themselves? No, that's the point I'm trying to make. But let's take that same hole in the wall, and now it's covered by a painting, and you know the hole exists behind the painting. Must you disclose that?
Yes.
You must disclose because it's a latent defect. It's hidden. The buyer cannot see it for themselves. And things that are not so obvious that always come up in conversation when we talk about disclosing problems with the property, physical issues and so forth. What about if there was some type of illegal activity associated with the property? The previous owner was a drug dealer. It was previously a crack house, a trap house. Is that something that has to be disclosed to the prospective buyer? What do you think? Yes or no? The answer is no.
No.
Federal law, not just Florida, federal law says that illegal activity is not a relevant fact that has to be disclosed to a prospective buyer before they acquire or purchase. Now, it might affect your decision, but that's not the conversation we should be having. That's your own preference. I'm telling you, federal law says you don't have to disclose. Let's take it a step further. And you tell me what you think about it. What about if somebody died in the property?
No.
Any type of death? Is that something that has to be disclosed to the prospective buyer, yes or no?
No.
Is that a deal breaker for you, Kane? If you found out somebody died in the property, would you still purchase it?
If
No?
I really liked it.
You found out somebody died in the property, will you still purchase it? So it's a deal breaker for you, but then I see mixed reviews here. Others are shaking their head. Well, they're nodding their head. Yes, I would buy it. I don't care. I don't care if somebody sees dead people, right? Or like they get chills down their arm or whatever. That doesn't bother me because I don't believe in ghosts. And if it means it will scare away all the other buyers so I can get a better deal, bring on the ghosts, right? The question is, does federal law require that that be disclosed to a prospective buyer? Is it relevant to you? It might be, but federal law says you do not. Death, any type of death, superstition, not relevant to a real estate transaction, does not have to disclose. But what if you get asked, this is the topic that comes up, what if they ask you directly, hey, Tyranny, what do you think about the property? Listen, I went into that room and I got to tell you, Tyranny, I got this cold sensation and my hair stood on end and I got this warm feeling down my spine. And then I see this stain on the floor and I smell a smell. Did somebody die in here, Tyranny? What do you do as a real estate professional in that circumstance? Deal honestly and fairly. I'm not telling you to lie, but could you be that agent that says, I suggest you do your own research? Could you be that agent? Yeah, you could. Fortunately, unfortunately, depending on how you look at it, but federal law says you don't have to disclose. So you say, if it's relevant to you, if that's a deal breaker for you, I suggest you do your own research. Fair enough? Okay. Let's move on to the next relationship, which is the most common relationship. Starts with a T. It's what? Transaction broker. And not quite like the no brokerage. As a transaction broker, guess what? You are a facilitator. You are facilitating within the transaction as a transaction broker. You're a facilitator, which essentially means you're brokering, right? Hence the name, transaction broker. You're negotiating. You're representing in this relationship that party that you're dealing with. Are you following so far? But guess what? You're not limited to only representing one side in the transaction. As a transaction broker, guess what? You could represent both sides. Both prospective buyer and seller in the same transaction and make a commish off of both sides. What's better than this? Why would you choose a relationship other than this? And you can see why now it's the most common. Because what agent would select something other than this? Why wouldn't you want at least the opportunity to potentially represent both sides? So it might start with you representing a seller listing their property as a transaction broker. That's the relationship you chose. And just by chance, a buyer walks in unrepresented. They want to make a full asking price offer, and you can represent them in that endeavor. And you can represent both parties, but you have to represent both parties in a what capacity? Neutral capacity, which also means limited capacity. Limited representation is what we're describing here. We'll talk more about this. But for now, do you follow the notes that we took about transaction broker? Can you see why it's the most popular choice out of the three?
Yes.
Why wouldn't you want the ability to represent both sides potentially and make a commission off of both sides? Keep all your commission in-house.
Can you provide an example of when you've seen a transaction broker be involved?
Yeah, of course. It's the most popular. So almost every single real estate transaction, you'll see an example of this.
Mm.
Not that long ago, I was able to not only list somebody's property, but I got an inquiry based on a Facebook post. They were unrepresented, and I facilitated between both parties. I was a transaction broker. I'm allowed to do that.
Mm.
Now, keep in mind, the relationship is not with you, it's with the brokerage company. Do you remember that?
Mm-hmm.
So when they sign the listing contract, they're signing, you're the representative of the company, but they're signing with the brokerage. Question.
And then the client that he has talks to directly to you after that. Can you like?
No, let's not do that. Let's not step on each other's toes.
Yeah.
It's ethical practices. And once you become a realtor, then that's frowned upon. And you could lose your membership with the Association of Realtors. Different from law, but still. Now let's talk about the transaction broker duties. In addition to the three I already mentioned, we're going to add 4 more. Do you see? You see the checks? Okay. The next is use skill, care, and diligence. That goes without saying. Present all offers, counter offers in a timely manner, explaining the details of each. So how do you're probably wondering, okay, how do I ethically remain neutral between buyer and seller in a real estate transaction if I know buyers and sellers are dealing at what with one another? Arm's length. They don't want the same thing. So how can I ethically remain in the middle? Especially if they're fighting against one another. Does it make sense to do this? How can you accomplish that? It's based on this duty. You're a facilitator. You're presenting what to each side? Offers and information until they can reach a what?
Agreement.
Agreement. That's it. That's how you remain neutral. You're working with the buyer and the seller. The buyer wants to submit an offer. Write up the offer, submit it to the seller, present the details. If they don't like it, they could submit a what type of offer to the other side?
Counter offer.
Counter offer, and repeat the process until they can reach a
Agreement.
agreement. And make your commission off of both sides when the transaction closes. Come again? Oh, well, I can't give you all of those details. I could just tell you that it's going to be part of that question. It's what we're describing right now. As a transaction broker, it's one of your duties. Know these duties. All 7, as you can see here. We talked about this already. Exercise limited confidentiality. You're neutral, impartial in the transaction, and perform any additional duties mutually agreed upon. So that's transaction broker, most common, as I mentioned. But then we come across the last one on this list, which is, just like it sounds, the single agent relationship. Single, you're actually going to choose your side that you want to represent. You're going to choose one side. So with this relationship, representation does exist. The single agent relationship, the last one. Representation does exist in this relationship. You are representing. But with this relationship, you're going to choose a side. Only one side is who you're representing. Buyer or seller, not both. And whatever side that you choose, what exists between you and that party? What type of relationship? A fiduciary relationship. This is the only out of the 3 where fiduciary exists. What does fiduciary mean? You're dealing in what with one another? Alliance with one another. Perfect. It's the only relationship out of these three choices where alliance exists. That's what fiduciary means. So that side that you select, it's that side and that side alone. You're looking out for their best interests in the transaction. Does this exist? Have I seen it in the business? Yes. Is it common? No, I told you the most common relationship that's selected is what? Transaction broker. Question. Yes, it can be. And we'll talk about it. It's something that we will discuss. So you're asking all the right questions, but I want to talk about it in a specific topic when we get to that subject. Great. So take a note of this, fiduciary. We know what this means, alliance. Anyhow. And I think that's evident with the additional duties that exist in this relationship. Think of the acronym COLD, will help you remember. Complete confidentiality with that party you select. Obedience to them, loyal to them, and anything you know that's going to benefit them in the transaction, you provide full and immediate what? Disclosure. I've only had a couple of times when somebody insisted on using the single agent relationship versus the one that I wanted to select, as you can imagine, which one? Transaction broker, because I want to be in the middle. I want the opportunity to potentially represent both sides. If I choose single agency, I can only have a relationship with that one side. And I don't have that additional ability, right? So I would try to persuade them otherwise. Usually when somebody insists, it's because they read a blog or watched some type of, I don't know, TikTok video or something like that. Like, oh, when you work with a real estate agent in Florida, make sure you ask them for the single agent relationship because it gives you loyalty, obedience, and all of this stuff. And maybe somebody gets intrigued by that, and that's something that they present to you. But I encourage you to try to persuade them otherwise. Get them to select the transaction broker relationship. It gives you more flexibility in the transaction. So if somebody brought that to me, I'll ask them to explain it to me. Okay, so first of all, that's awesome. Nobody really asked for the single agent relationship, and it does exist. We could choose it, but can you tell me why you think that's more beneficial than the transaction broker relationship? And I'll just wait until it gets really awkward when they start stumbling on themselves trying to explain it. They probably won't have the ammunition or enough bullets to try to fight for it, right? And then you'll be able to easily persuade them otherwise. You say, hey, listen, it looks like you did some research. I applaud you in that. But I've been in the business for a while, and trust me, let's use the transaction broker relationship, and then you justify it. If they're still insisting, then create a hypothetical for them. If you want to persuade them otherwise, you say, hey, listen, we could choose the single agent relationship, but if we do, and a buyer walks into an open house that I'm hosting for your property, they want to offer full asking price, and they're unrepresented, I can't help them out in submitting that offer, even though they want to move forward immediately. Is that something you want? They're going to change their tune real quick, right? And they'll say, okay, well, what's the alternative? If we're not going to choose single agency, what do you recommend? And then you choose the transaction broker relationship. It just makes sense. And then if they're still insisting, then you whip out the big guns and you tell them this. This is the only relationship out of the three where fiduciary exists, which is alliance. But legally speaking, because we have fiduciary, I take responsibility for you and you take responsibility for my actions. Legal liability for things that I do in the transaction. So if I mess up and cause loss or harm and a lawsuit arises, you're going to take responsibility for my actions as well. Is that something you want? Probably not. So let's choose the transaction broker relationship. Do you understand what I'm pitching here? Okay. Even though there's three relationships and you can choose any one of these three, you can. There's one that's automatically assumed in the state of Florida. Can you guess which one it is? Automatic. So even if you don't have it in writing, you are classified as what? Transaction broker. I told you it's the most common, and that reinforces that concept. Let's continue. Question. Potentially. It's all circumstantial. So even though you can get somebody to sign a transaction broker relationship to list their property, for instance, doesn't mean that you're going to find the buyer and represent them as well. You might have that property listed in the MLS and the buyer is represented by another agent and you just work with each other to complete the deal. So you might not. But if you have the transaction broker relationship in place, then you know at least the door is open for that possibility. You don't want to shut the door on that opportunity for you. Something you need to know on page 70, the shaded box. Fiduciary, non-fiduciary relationships. There's only one relationship out of the three where fiduciary exists. Which one is it? Yes. And for that reason, the buyer or seller, not both, because remember, a single agent, you can only choose one side. They're called a what? Because they're delegating authority to you and your brokerage. They're the principal, and you are the what? You're the agent. Remember, principal, agent, fiduciary? Okay. With the other two relationships, because fiduciary is not present, what is the buyer and or seller you're working with referred to as? You need to know this. Starts with a C, customer. Why is knowing this relevant? Because on your exam, if they use the name principal in the question, you know they're only talking about one relationship. They could only be talking about the single agent relationship, which could help you eliminate some incorrect answers. Now let's talk about something that is possible in other states, but here in Florida, it's illegal. It's called dual agency. Have you ever seen a spy movie before? Spy movie. 007, Mission Impossible, one of these spy movies. And what is a spy doing in a spy movie? They're playing what? Double agent. They're doing what? They're playing both sides to benefit themselves or a third party, some mystery person. Guess what? It's the same thing in real estate. That's what a double agent is. That's what a dual agent is. They're trying to represent both buyer and seller in the same transaction. Keyword starts with an F. Fiduciarily. Remember, fiduciary means you have alliance. You're trying to have alliance with both sides of the transaction. Look out for both sides of the transaction, their best interests. That's unacceptable. That's illegal. That's what it means to operate as a dual agent, a double agent. Now you're confused because you're thinking, well, what about the transaction broker relationship? I thought you said that you could do that. Transaction broker does not have fiduciary. There's no alliance in the transaction broker relationship. Remember, as a transaction broker, look up here. You're what? You're neutral. You're a middleman. You're impartial. You're just a facilitator. The reason why dual agency is illegal is because you're trying to have fiduciary with both sides. What's the only relationship where fiduciary exists? Let me remind you. Single agent. So it's where your brokerage company tries to have a single agent relationship with buyer and seller in the same transaction. Does that make sense? You can't do that. That's illegal. And that's what's described for us here. Says, acts as a, represents as a fiduciary for both buyer and the seller in the same transaction. Single agent. It's illegal in Florida. Yes.
Both sides.
Come again?
Both sides.
As a transaction broker.
Presenting both sides. What do you mean by that? Like, when they're purchasing a home, like,
Yeah, think of a traditional real estate transaction. Like a residential sale.
I only see like every time I hire like a realtor and then the leasing is already with another realtor. So my realtor talks to the other realtor.
But you're talking about the buyer side. That's your experience as a buyer. But what if you're on the other side?
Buyer and the seller, the other part,
Mhm.
they had their. realtor.
Right. But what's the confusion? Is it confusion or is it enlightenment?
Because I had. no-
Okay. Well, I'm glad I'm able to show you this because these options exist in our business for a reason for you to take advantage of or not. So once again, let's recap. Let's review. As a transaction broker, you are what? And you can represent both sides. Represent them, help facilitate, present offers and information to each side until they can reach a what? Agreement. But you don't have alliance with either side. There's only one relationship where alliance exists, which is what? The single agent relationship. But if you say, hey, listen, imagine they're buyer and seller. I want a single agent relationship with you, buyer, a single agent relationship with you, seller, and then I'm going to try to bring them together. How can I have alliance with both sides? That's illegal. That's a dual agency. I'm trying to be a double agent. But you're probably thinking, okay, well, why on earth would somebody choose a single agent relationship if you come across this circumstance? That's what I'm telling you. Choose the transaction broker relationship and you never run into that issue. Start with that from the very beginning. The question you asked before earlier, and I told you come back to it, is what if you make a mistake? You choose a single agent relationship and you're like, okay, I want to switch. Can you do it? Yes, you can. We'll talk about it. All right. It's going to be something we see in just a moment. We already talked about this. I summarized it in that chart. I told you I was going to save you some time by us going through that chart. But let's actually go to page 73. And under transaction broker, this section 4.5 here, I want to show you something. It's right here on line 18. Under Florida law, it's presumed that all licensees operate as what? Didn't we mention that? So even if you don't select in writing what type of relationship you're going to have, it's assumed you're already a transaction broker. Just know that. But you should always have everything in writing. That's personal advice, professional advice. But even if you don't, if you presume helping them out without anything in writing, you are still a transaction broker. Let's continue. With all the duties that we described with the transaction broker relationship. Let's move on to the next page, the bottom here. What you're tested on for two separate questions, it's the same information. They just reword the question. It's the same information. You're probably thinking, okay. Well, it says another distinct feature of the customer in the transaction broker relationship is not responsible for the acts of the licensee as a principal might be in a single agent relationship. Do you remember I mentioned this to you? If you choose a single agent relationship, hey, we have fiduciary, we have alliance, you're responsible for my acts and I yours. But that doesn't exist in transaction broker because no fiduciary is present. Fiduciary only exists in the single agent relationship. So that's another reason why you shouldn't choose it. But anyhow, you might be curious as to who chooses the appropriate relationship that you proceed with. Do I have the freedom to do so, or does it come from the higher up? Usually it comes from the brokerage. The brokerage will encourage you to use one versus another, and it might be circumstantial as well, based on the circumstance. There's only one circumstance where I would encourage you to use it versus transaction broker, and it's an ethical decision. If you're helping a relative or your best friend, I suggest you use a single agent relationship. I think it would be unethical otherwise. Because if you choose transaction broker with them, you're representing your parent in the transaction, and you have a buyer that you want to match with them. Whose best interest are you going to look out for? This random person that wants to buy your parents' house or your mom or dad? Come on. So I would choose a single agent relationship and tell them, hey, listen, if you're unrepresented, you just have, listen, I can help you out, but I can't represent you. But no, I'm looking out for this side of the transaction, not for you. So if you're uncomfortable with that, you should seek out your own representation. Find a real estate agent that's going to look out for your best interests. Make sense? Now, let's proceed. I can answer your question now, Bruno. Actually, let me paint a picture for you. Let's see if you guys were paying attention. Fair enough. You tell me what you think. You're working with a seller as a single agent, listing their property, looking for a prospective buyer. Just by chance, a buyer walks into your brokerage office. You're the first party to greet them. The buyer wants you to be a single agent for them as well. And the specifications they're looking for in their dream home is exactly what you're listing. And the seller you're representing as a single agent. So you're thinking, oh my gosh, it's a dream scenario. They're a perfect fit for one another. I want to introduce them to one another and complete the deal, make a commission off of potentially both sides. Is that acceptable for you to do so? Single with the seller, single agent relationship with the buyer. Fiduciary with both sides. No, that's illegal. No. That's called a dual agent. So you're getting the hang of it. Great. Yeah. Let's change it slightly. You're representing the seller as a single agent. Your coworker is representing the buyer as a single agent. Now, can you collaborate with one another and complete the deal? Yes or no?
Yes. Yes.
No. Exactly. Remember, the relationship is not with you or your coworker. It's with your what? Brokerage. And you're both with the same brokerage. It's still an illegal dual agency. The brokerage has a single agent relationship with buyer and seller. You can't bring them together in the same transaction. Okay. You got to pay attention to that. That's a type of question you might encounter. And then the last example, you're representing the seller, single agent, ABC Realty. The buyer, single agent with XYZ Realty. Now can you collaborate with one another? Yeah, of course, there's no conflict. There's two separate brokerage companies. There's no issue with that. But who would want to outsource their commission to another brokerage to get the deal done? You want to complete the deal in-house, keep all the commission in-house, right? So the question Bruno had was, can you switch? Yes, you can, but you have to. There's no way around it. You can't do this verbally. You must get them to sign a document in order for them to switch. This is the name of the document, and you could be tested on it. It's right here. To gain permission to switch, you get them to sign the consent. What does consent mean? Permission. To transition. That means to what? To switch to what relationship? Transaction broker relationship. So you're saying switch to the transaction broker relationship. Sign. They sign, you can switch, and then you can bring those parties together ethically now, legally, because you're neutral for both sides.
I thought it was.
Hold on one second. Online question.
I thought it was unethical, though, to take a client from another brokerage already if they've already signed like documents that they're selling with that brokerage. Because you said in this case, as long as they sign our document stating the written consent to transition, but.
No, I'm saying, I'm not describing poaching at all from other companies. I'm talking about imagine you have a buyer and a seller. You're representing each party as a single agent. You can't bring them together. That would be an illegal dual agency.
Right.
But they want to be introduced to one another. This seller has my dream house. How do we make this happen? Oh, that buyer wants to offer full asking price. How do we make that happen? Okay, we're going to have to switch the relationship.
Got it.
This is what you do. Get them to sign. It's called it's the only document that if you say it out loud, it has a natural rhythm to it. Consent to transition to transaction broker. And we use that rhythm to help you remember. So I like to call it the consent to transition to transaction broker form. Yeah, man. Once again, it's called the consent to transition to transaction broker form. You only have to get this one document signed that's enough to switch and proceed as a transaction broker in the deal, represent each party neutrally. Yes, question. Both parties. If you want to transition both, yes. It's the document right here. The consent to transition to a transaction broker form. It's on line 20. Yeah, no problem. Yes, question. Yeah, you can get them to re-sign a new agreement with you, but it's not a common thing. I would say I'm going to test you right now, and you tell me what you think about it. And I want you to take a note of this little test that we're going to do. I'll place it in the margin. And that's kind of what we see here in figure 4.2 on this next page, authorized relationships in one brokerage firm in the same transaction, but I'll make it a little bit more digestible. Here we go. I'll abbreviate each relationship. For instance, transaction broker is going to be TB. Can you have a transaction broker relationship with both sides? Is that acceptable? Yes, good job. Yes. What about a transaction broker relationship with one side and a no brokerage relationship with the other side? Is that acceptable? So you're neutral with one side and the other side, you're not representing them, you're just taking care of the paperwork. Yeah, the answer is yes. What about a no brokerage relationship with both sides? Taking care of the paperwork for both sides and not representing? The answer is yes, you could. What about a transaction broker relationship with one side and a single agent relationship with the other side?
No.
So you're neutral with one side and have alliance, loyalty to the other side. Is that acceptable? No, that would be unacceptable. What about a single agent relationship with both sides? No, that actually is an illegal dual agency. Perfect. And then last example, single agent relationship with one side and a no brokerage relationship with the other side. You have complete loyalty, representation, alliance with one side, and the other side, you're not representing them. You're just taking care of the what? Paperwork. The answer is yes. And actually, look up here. This is the only combination that's acceptable if you have a single agent relationship with one side. If you have alliance with one side, the only other way that you can assist the other side is to be a no broker for them. Just take care of the what? Paperwork. But let them know, I'm not representing you. Just taking care of the paperwork. I'm representing this side. Question? Okay. Yeah. Let's continue on. And that's summarized. They don't do a good job of explaining here, but that's exactly what we just got done describing. Let's continue on. We're almost at break time. Go to page 77, but we're almost done with this unit as well. On page 77. These rules that we're describing apply specifically to a residential transaction. The sale of residential property. Do you see this? It says written disclosures are required only for residential sale transactions. This is what we're focusing on for exam purposes. And you're going to be tested on that. How do you identify the sale of residential property? This is something we already saw yesterday. How do you identify residential? How many units? 4 units or less on how many acres? Isn't that what we see in front of us? They're talking about the sale of 4 units or less. The sale of 10 acres or less. And they give you examples. But we already know. Residential property. When does it not apply? Because every time you learn a rule, you learn the exception to the rule, right? When does it not apply? Well, if we're not talking about the sale of residential property. And you see a list here. One example is a what? Auction. Maybe that will appear somewhere within your exam. I don't know. I had a dream about it last night. An auction is not a residential sale. And the same rules would not apply. The rules pertaining to the relationships that we described, those relationships wouldn't even exist. Therefore, the duties would not apply. The requirements would not apply. Let me ask you a question. Let me ask you a quick question. Just using common sense. Because we just got done talking about the 3 relationships, right? The duties. When is it appropriate? One versus another and so forth. The combinations that could be made. What about when you enter into the relationship? When is it appropriate to present, hey, this is the relationship that we're entering into. Go ahead and sign so we may proceed. When does that occur? You said when the offer is submitted? I would say, and I'm sure you'd agree with this, and maybe this is what you were thinking of, before you start doing any work, right? Before you start showing them 20 different properties, wasting your time, your gas, your patience, you probably want them to sign a buyer representation agreement outlining the relationship you have with them. Yeah, I'm going to represent you as a transaction broker, help you look for properties within this area of interest. Make sense? Before you list a seller's property, you should probably present the listing contract, which also includes the relationship you're going to proceed with, the ones that we learned about, correct? And actually, the rule is the Realtor Association requires that if you're going to put a listing in the MLS to promote it, blast it on the internet, you have to have a listing contract signed by the seller. You can't just put information in the MLS without having a legal listing contract signed. Mm-hmm.
First, so it's a law.
Yes. And actually, that's going to lead us on to page 78, disclosure format. What's the format of this disclosure? It says it could be a separate document or it could be incorporated into another document, included as part of another document, such as a listing agreement or a buyer representation agreement. Buyer brokerage agreement is how they describe it. Do you see? But I'm going to tell you it's most likely part of either one of those two. Question?
Listing agreement, then you leave the property for like 1 year. And the tenants move off and you had to leave the property again. Do you have to do a new leasing agreement or the first one that you did the last year still valid for the new listing?
You'd have to get a new one signed. Yeah, because that contract has already been completed. It's terminated. How do you terminate an agreement? Well, it's the same way you terminate relationships, fully performed. Have you performed all your obligations within the contract? Yeah, you found a tenant, right? So if you want to list the property again for rent, you have to get them to sign a completely new listing contract. Now, there's a good question. It is something we'll see later on, but it's okay. When incorporated into other documents, says it's required disclosure notice, says must be of the same size or no larger than other provisions of the document and must be, what does it say? Yes, in its placement. I mean, this is a little bit petty, right? It's very particular. But guess what? You don't have to worry about any of this. How do I know? Because these documents are already prepared and pre-approved. Once you become a realtor, you're going to have access to this database of documents. You mentioned it, Form Simplicity. That's one of them. Transaction Desk as well. And you'll have access. Yeah, they have lawyers that are on staff that constantly update these based on law changes. So you don't have to think about it. You just know that when you go into this database, you're getting the most up-to-date contract that you can use for that circumstance. Anyhow. Remember, these two, no brokerage, single agency, are not assumed in Florida, so they must be in writing if you want to proceed. Transaction broker relationship, it's presumed, it's assumed that all licensees operate as transaction brokers unless otherwise dictated. But we already know that. If you want to switch the relationship, remember this document? You're getting consent to switch. We already talked about it. When talking about documents in general, how long must you retain documents for? 5 years. You'll see it on line 33. Yes, but here's the thing. You might be maintaining documents on behalf of the brokerage for the transactions you work on, but you need to make those documents easily accessible to the brokerage. So most likely it's like stored in the cloud. The brokerage has, there's systems for that. But you must retain the most important thing, retain the documents for how long? 5 years. IRS is 3 years. Real estate is always 5 years because you're going to see the 5 years pop up again. And I'm going to remind you, real estate, 5 years. And this is because of the statute of limitations. Have you heard of the statute of limitations? It's the time limit you have to sue somebody, and it could be off of a real estate transaction. For written agreements, you have up to 5 years to sue somebody. If you're involved in a transaction where somebody lost money and somebody got sued, they might ask you, hey, you remember that transaction you did 5 years ago? Pull up the documents so we can review it. You got to be prepared for that. It's the statute of limitations. We'll see that in unit 11. Anyhow, can you store documents in the cloud? Can you store documents in digital form like a terabyte hard drive? Yes, you can. That's the world we live in. No. I mean, when I got my license, I needed to maintain physical documents. I had a filing cabinet. I had 6 filing cabinets. Each filing cabinet was this width. And it was this tall. And I had 6 of them filling up the whole wall because I'm doing all these transactions. I have to maintain those transactions for 5 years. And I have to have my own database of up-to-date contracts that I make available to my agents. They come into the office, they make photocopies of the contracts so they can use it for a listing or whatever the case may be. I had to be prepared and make that available to them. That's not the world we live in now. Now we live in a digital world. Fill it out online and then send it to their freaking cell phone and they can sign with their finger. This is just examples of what those documents look like. We're going to take a break soon. Bear with me. We're almost done with this unit. Go to the bottom of page 81. When is it not appropriate upon initial encounter with somebody to whip out a contract on them? So we talked about earlier, common sense is before you start doing any work, get them to sign so you can proceed. That's when you present the relationship, right? But it's not always practical upon first encounter because a book will tell you upon initial meeting, you're supposed to present the relationship, but it doesn't always work. Doesn't make sense. So that's what we see here. I'm going to tell you the 4 most important ones. It's the list we have in front of us. If they're already working with another agent, butt out. Don't step on anybody's toes. If it's an open house or like in a model home or something like this, model home. Do you know the purpose of an open house? I mean, listen, it's all of the above. Yes, it is part marketing because you want to get your face out there. You want to put the sign up and your face is on it, put balloons, and you want to let people know that you're doing business in that neighborhood. That's one thing. You want to attract buyers to that property, but the chances of you finding a buyer that wants to purchase that property, it's very rare. It's very rare, but you want to make sure when they walk in the front door, you get them to what? Sign in, put their contact information. And what's the question you ask them on the sign-in sheet? Are you represented? Maybe even what's your timeline of purchasing? Because they're there in your open house because they're what? They're searching, they're looking around, right? They're interested in this property for whatever reason, and you probably want to find out what that reason is, because if they're unrepresented and you see that on a sign-in sheet, you want to help them out and be their buyer's agent, right? So you do it for lead generation more than anything. So at an open house, does it make sense to whip out a contract on somebody? Say, hey, listen, I'd love to show you the master bedroom, but before we go into the primary bedroom, can you sign this contract with me? It doesn't make any sense. And you're going to scare the crap out of somebody. Next is casual encounters. You're at Publix. You're at Target. You're at a grocery store. Is it appropriate to whip out a contract on somebody in the grocery store? Probably not. So that's not practical either. And the last one I want to share with you is if they're asking for factual information. Is the primary bedroom on the first floor? Openly and freely share this information with them. Don't withhold until they sign a contract with you, is what I'm saying. Let's continue on. Go to the bottom of page 81. We're almost done. Bear with me. Do you remember earlier when we talked about being a dual agent and how it's illegal? There's an exception to that. Remember, most of the laws that were created are for what type of property? Residential. So if we're not talking about residential, do the same rules apply? I mentioned that yesterday, and I told you we would see it time and time again. Here it is in front of us. An example is commercial. In a non-residential real estate transaction, where the buyer and seller have assets of over $1 million, one broker can designate two of their associates to act as single agents for both sides in the same transaction. That's why it's called designated sales associates, because the broker is designating two of their sales associates to be a single agent for both sides. And you're probably thinking, well, wait a second, Michael, isn't that illegal? Isn't that a dual agency? Yeah, it is. Go to the next page, line 1. In a what type of transaction is it illegal? But this is non-residential, and that's why you can get away with it. It's called designated sales associates. It's the exception to that rule regarding being a dual agent. All right, let's continue on. Now the last thing for this unit. Yep. And then we'll take our break. Last thing for this unit, it's at the bottom of page 83. Up until now, we've been talking about the various relationships, how to get into the relationship, the duties that you owe, your obligations, responsibilities. Now let's talk about what starts with a T. 83. Terminating. Anytime you hear the word termination in real life, you think of something negative. But termination, like the TV show Severance. Have you ever seen that TV show? Anyhow, termination in real estate is not necessarily negative. Termination in real estate means to end. It means to end. So what does this actually mean? Instead of terminating, write down ending. This is ending a brokerage relationship. And we know the three: no brokerage, single agency, transaction broker. Just like any relationship, you can end nicely or not so nicely. And we've all been in relationships, right? Situationship. Anyhow, the state exam might ask you, what's the best way to terminate the brokerage relationship? Your answer is the first bullet point, starts with the F. It's called what? It's called fulfillment. Fulfillment means everybody got what they wanted. Buyer said they would buy, they bought it. Seller said they would sell, they sold it. We got paid our commission. We all walk away what? Happy. It's the best way to end things. And that's one way. But let's go through the rest. The next is mutual agreement. The feeling's mutual. It's not working out for me. And then they concur, right? It's not working out for me either. Let's go our separate ways. It's not you. It's me. Hopefully you never use that cliche line. Okay. They went in the restroom? Okay. It's maybe one of their agents. Expiration. The time has expired. Your contract for representation has expired. So that would terminate. Broker walks away. Broker renounces. They might be losing on any commissions that they were entitled to if they walk away. Principal walks away. They might owe the brokerage some compensation if they try to terminate early. That's in the contract. For instance, I'm listing your property for you. I hire a professional photographer, videographer. I put advertisements on social media. That's money out of my pocket. But I know that these tools work in order to get more eyes on your property and get it sold, and then I'll make my money back in commission. But you terminate early. Well, I spent this money, so I want to get that money back. That's going to be detailed in your agreement. It's stipulated in the agreement. But I'm just sharing with you a hypothetical. It could happen. The next three are easy to understand. If anybody dies, or if the property is destroyed, it would terminate the agreement. Wiped out by a hurricane, terminate it. The listing contract, for instance, in representation you have. And the big B, which is what? Yes, bankruptcy. If anybody files for bankruptcy, that would terminate the relationship. First of all, if you're working with a buyer and the buyer files for bankruptcy, they don't have any money to purchase. Terminated. If you're working with a seller and they file for bankruptcy, they shouldn't have anything to sell. They forfeit their assets. Terminates the relationship. Are you with me? Any questions? We're done with this unit. Let's take a break. I want you guys to be back at tomorrow. Is that what you said? 7:25. About 15 minutes. Stretch out, grab a snack, make a phone call, do what you got to do. 7:25. See you guys in just a moment.
In an era where online education often falls short, there's an oasis transforming the digital learning landscape. Welcome to Cameron Academy. With our AI-powered platform, we're not just changing the game, we're rewriting the rules. At Cameron Academy, we're not just elevating education, we're lifting learners to new heights. Our comprehensive video lessons and AI tutors simplify complex real estate concepts. At Cameron Academy, we do more than prepare you for your exams. We equip you with the essential knowledge for a successful career in real estate. Break away from the traditional. Think computerized exams, a convenient study app at your fingertips, and AI support, but wait, that's not all. Live chat support when you need it, AI-driven text-to-speech content, your own personal AI tutor, and instant online certifications. This isn't just education. This is the future. We're reimagining what it means to ascend to success in the real estate industry. Choose Cameron Academy, the oasis of innovative learning. Your journey to success starts here.
We tried in Mexico grasshopper guacamole. That was interesting. And we also tried ants as well in Mexico City. No. Not really. It's just, it's a texture thing. It's like, you're what you're eating. So it's like, it's crunchy. Yeah. No, they're like bullet ants, like bull ants, like this big.
It's like lemongrass.
Huh? With what?
The face of the.
Yes.
This kind is lemongrass.
Lemongrass. Okay. Yeah. It's a thing that you got to wrap your head around. Now, when we went to China, we went to Beijing, and listen, if it's on the planet, if it moves, yes, okay, no offense, but we went to this thing called the special food market. The smell alone, it was, I have nothing to compare it to. In China, this bad. It was, my wife was pregnant at the time and she threw up because of the smell alone, but she's more sensitive, but still even I could admit it was bad. But they were cooking everything. So you go down, roaches, live scorpions on a stick, frog, roasted, rat. Yes.
You eat them?
No. They do. No, I don't eat pork. I stopped eating pork a while ago. I'm not Muslim, but I don't think it's for me. I just want to stay away. Like I know what pigs are. I know what they're capable of. I know their environment, and I'm just like, okay, I can live without pork. But pepperoni pizza comes by, I'm like, oh my gosh, I want it so bad. That's my weakness, but I'm not gonna eat it. Anyhow, but yes, I've tried a lot of different foods. Man, my worst fear is like being on a like really amazing vacation and then like being trapped in the bed the whole time because I eat some wacky street food. So like people make fun of me when I go to like McDonald's or one of these places. I have no shame whatsoever. I would prefer to go to a fast food chain versus take a risk and kill my vacation. Because I've done it before. Even Bahamas, I've done it before. I mean, Bahamas, I had a coconut drink. They made like fresh coconut and mixed it up with ice and all this stuff. And I was throwing up the whole time. It was bad. I wasted the whole trip. So even that, you can't. And if you go to Mexico, you got to be careful. Don't eat the ice. Don't drink the water. Anyhow.
Don't go to India.
I'm going to go to India. But I'll be careful with the food. Like you see these videos on like social media, like it's like no shoes on, Indian style slap. It's it's just vacation. Yeah, like traveling. I have the travel bug. So India's not a weird place.
You go to Egypt.
I mean, Taj Mahal is a wonder of the world. Got to see that. New Delhi, I mean, it's a big city. Anyhow. But yes. You said Egypt? Yeah, I've been to Egypt. My cousin's getting married in Cairo. I can't wait to go.
No.
In Egypt?
Well, it is for a woman.
I mean, don't be a target. Don't wear fancy jewelry and like cover up if you're a woman. Blend in.
They'll try to
Act like you belong. Like it's unfortunate. Like every time we go on, like we like going on cruise vacations to see like different parts of the planet, and they do these small excursions. And for whatever reason, they always pick on the older Asian couples. They always target them, and they'll cut the bag with a razor and steal the contents from outside, take their camera and all this stuff. And it's just like, it happens a lot. Anyhow, but not to me. I've never had an experience. God willing, it never happens. just put your hand in your pocket and, you know, just go like this, like you're holding a gun the whole time, and nobody's gonna mess with you. Just go like that, you know, wear sunglasses and like walk slow and look around. Nobody's gonna mess with you. Just look like a narco, you know? On page 45, here we go. We talked about this agency already. Do you remember? You remember DBPR? Yes, DBPR. We called them the Florida Licensing Authority. That's what we wrote that down yesterday. That's going to be confirmed for us here. They're the agency charged with what? There you go. Regulating businesses and professionals that they issue licenses for in the state of Florida. We're going to learn some fun facts about DBPR. You might be tested on this. Go to page 46. Highlight lines 1 through 8. On these 3 bullet points. This is when DBPR can impose their authority on the public. So what reasons are they allowed to step in and use their authority? If the unregulated practice can harm the public, if the public is not adequately protected, or if there's no other restriction available to help people, then they can use their authority. Another fun fact about DBPR. They operate under what branch of the governor? The executive. You could be tested on that. You'll see it for your homework tonight. And under, look on line 11, under chapter what? 455 of the Florida statutes, the rules that govern, regulate DBPR, it gives them authority to do what? Well, investigate consumer complaints against licensees. Remember, they issue licenses. They can issue court orders when conducting investigations to get testimony from people. Issue cease and desist orders to unlicensed individuals that are acting as if they have a license and they should not be. And issue citations to individuals that are licensed by them. Highlight this on line 15. The chief administrator of the DBPR is also the what? Secretary. One thing you could be tested on. But the other the same. But who are they chosen by? Yep. And who are they confirmed by? The state or Florida Senate. Where's their main office located? Unfortunately, the capital of Florida. Okay. Tallahassee. It should be Orlando. We can all agree to that. Orlando should be the capital. It just makes sense. We got Mickey, you know, none of this would exist if it wasn't for Disney. Yeah. You don't have to know everything on this organizational chart. Okay. I'm going to show you the most important divisions. On page 47. Highlight this. The division of professions. What purpose do they serve? Highlight this, lines 4 and 5. Yep. And they also have the contract with Pearson VUE. You remember Pearson VUE, the national testing vendor? So they regulate educational courses, license examinations, and they have a contract with the national testing vendor to administer the state exam for various licenses that they issue. Check this out. Division of Service Operations. What do? Well, it's the central intake unit that process all license what? Applications and fees. When you submit your application to myfloridalicense.com, that's the DBPR's website. I took you on a field trip. It goes to them. But naturally, you're going for what type of license? A real estate license. They would forward it to the appropriate division based on the license that you have. In this case, our division is the division of what?
Yes.
Lines 27, division of what? Real estate or DRE. That's our division. If you're trying to get a cosmetology license, division of cosmetology. And you'll see right here, the purpose, the main purpose that they have, provide all services required to administer Florida real estate license law. But what we talked about yesterday, what we wrote down yesterday, they provide support services to the DeBeeper and FREC, Division of Real Estate. They provide support services to the DeBeeper and FREC. But what support service? You'll see right here. Routine duties, clerical functions. They describe this as ministerial duties. They're pencil pushers. They're paperwork sorters. That's the purpose that they serve essentially. And where's their main office located? Yeah, convenient for us. And we'll talk about why this is relevant to us in just a moment. But remember that Division of Real Estate, they could be located anywhere in the state of Florida, but it just so happens they're located in downtown Orlando, 400 West Robinson Street. Go to the next page and you'll see why this is relevant, because now we're going to talk about the Florida Real Estate what? Commonly known as FREC, established 1925. The law was established first in 1923, then FREC to enforce the law in 1925. Think of them as police for Florida real estate license law.
You didn't go over any more dates today?
Not yet. Yes, it's going to be tomorrow. We'll discuss more dates. Actually, Thursday, excuse me. To learn the other important dates. The Florida Real Estate Commission, regulatory body charged with protecting the general public. But how do they do it? By regulating all of us, real estate licensees. All real estate licensees in Florida. Brokers, associates, schools, Cameron Academy, instructors. Michael Sadao, yes, exactly. FREC is also charged with fostering the education of real estate licensees and permit holders. And I want you to continue further down to how they're composed. You're probably thinking that the Florida Real Estate Commission is a huge agency because of their responsibility. They're responsible for regulating tens of thousands of real estate licensees that exist throughout the entire state of Florida, thinking it's a huge department, but it's to the contrary. It's composed of only how many members? 7. Yeah. This is how it's organized.
Oh, excuse me.
Every state is different on the number. For instance, North Carolina is 9 commissioners. Every state has their own real estate commission. Texas is 12. But Florida, we found some way to make it work with only 7. Question online.
Yes, you had something highlighted. I was highlighting and missed it. That's it right there, the 7 members.
Yes, 7 members. But that's actually going to be summarized for us here on this chart. So this is what I want to get to. This is the breakdown of the 7 members. It's composed of how many active brokers?
4.
Who have been licensed for at least how many years? 5 years. This is something you might be required to remember for exam purposes. So at least 4 brokers. Active brokers. That means they're participating. They're involved in the real estate business. At least 5 years in the business. One of them can be an active sales associate or a broker who have been licensed for at least how many years? 2. And 2 of them are consumer members, people who have never had a real estate what? License. And of course, that's a good opinion to have. You want the average consumer's opinion on laws, rules, regulations that impact the real estate profession, the laws that impact our industry. It affects everybody. And at least one of them has to be how old? 60 years of age or older, a little seniority, somebody who's been around, who's seen changes in the market. That's a good opinion to have because the market is in cycles. We have these seasons, they call it ebb and flow of the industry. And then also when we've seen really bad times, really good times, it's good to be wise of that, to not repeat the same mistakes. Somebody who survived 2008 and can live to tell the tale and is still in the business and can explain why we shouldn't do things a particular way and should do it a different way. Dominique, you had a question.
Never be licensed. If you get a license,
You can't be one of the consumer members. No, people who have never had a license. A real estate license specifically, yes.
let's see, I don't have any license, so I'm one of the consumers. So one of the, I decide to get my license. So immediately I get my license, I can.
You'd have to relinquish your position. Yes.
Was this the commission you are applying to be on, or is this a different?
Yes, it is. So the question I have from Tyranny is, how often does that change? I'm going to explain that in just a moment because we'll talk about the term of office here. First of all, to be one of these 7 members, who gets to choose? Each new what? How long is a governor's term?
4 years.
Confirms. Now, the state Senate has to confirm you, but yes, it's a 4-year term. Staggered. So they could be 4 years on, 4 years off, 4 years on, 4 years off, as many times as you wish. How many consecutive back-to-back 4-year terms? May not serve more than 2 consecutive 4-year terms. Just like the president, just like the governor. And it makes sense because every new governor gets to choose their 7 commissioners. So I petitioned to be one of these commissioners, and we'll see how that goes. And I've been emailing them back and forth. We'll see when they're going to make a decision on that. I would be one of those 4 brokers who have been in the business for at least 5 years. That'd be my position.
Is it because is it because the slot is empty right now, or would you replace someone, or would you just be added and there'll be 5?
Well, it's a combination of what's going on right now. So some people are leaving, and then also it's the second term of the governor, so that he gets to appoint all over again.
Got it.
So some people their term is being sunset, and then others, it's just the governor gets to choose. He could ask for the same people to be a part of it. I don't know if that's his prerogative, Mr. DeSantis, but we'll see. I think I put up a pretty good argument as to why, but I have extensive experience in the industry, and we'll see what happens. Maybe I'll get you guys to help me out with a petition. Anyhow, commission members do not receive a what? So it's a thankless job, okay? It's you're not going to become rich off of being one of the Florida real estate commissioners. Let's just say that right now. In lieu of receiving a salary, you receive how much per diem? $50 per day, which is per diem, when on official business, plus reimbursement for out-of-pocket expenses such as travel accommodations and meals. Not Disney tickets, okay? Not private jets, none of that stuff. We're talking about very basic needs so you can get to the meetings. How often are the meetings held? When are you actually on official business where you receive $50 per day? That's another question, right? Is it a full-time job? No. You'll see right here. Meetings are held each what? Line 10. Each month. So it's once a month. And they're hosted in the headquarters for the Division of Real Estate. Where is that located? Downtown Orlando. So for me, it's an easy choice because I live 10 minutes from where the building is because I'm in Winter Park. So for me, they don't really have to reimburse me much is what I'm saying. It's a no-brainer for them if they're trying to cut costs now, you know, Doge and everything that's going on with that. I believe the industry needs a change when it comes to certain things with education. honestly, I'm not opposed to the class being a little bit longer. I know people might not like that. It makes more work for me, but I'm willing to make those tough choices that might put me in an uncomfortable position. It might jeopardize my business even, because I think it's the right thing to do, and I think it's better for the industry in the long term. And I think maybe there's certain requirements that have to be met if you want to become a real estate professional. I think the requirements are pretty good right now, but with minor tweaks. I don't want to alienate everybody, but I do think that there's a lot of people that don't survive in the business because they don't have the right tools. So maybe there's part of education that should be taught that can contribute towards their longevity in this career, rather than just putting people through this wheel. They start a class, they don't finish it, they finish class, they start the industry, and they never complete a transaction because they don't know what to do next. So I think there's something there. And then also testing and advertising and a few other things that I think should change. Wholesaling, I think there needs to be reform there as well. I don't know if you're familiar with what's going on with wholesaling. I don't like it, and I think that needs to change, and I'm going to be an enemy for a lot of people. But I think there needs to be change. Otherwise, people are going to get abused, and a lot of people are getting abused, especially with sub two investing, subject to an existing mortgage. We'll talk about that in a later unit. When you hear it, you're going to be like, why would somebody agree to this? It's because the investor made it sound really attractive and convinced somebody to be put in this, what I think a horrible position.
What happens after 60 days when you don't?
Sue them. Yeah. Nothing. I didn't have time to go through that yesterday and vent with you guys, but it's ridiculous because we know how much college costs and a degree in anything. So imagine a 4-year degree. What does a 4-year degree then cost you? $80,000, $100,000, right? $80,000, $100,000 to get a 4-year degree in real estate. Okay, well, what's different from the 2-week course? I actually spoke with a professor and I convinced them to show me the curriculum because we had a rapport with each other. And I say, I teach this real estate class and I'm just curious because maybe I want to teach at a collegiate level or at a university and be a professor and offer this type of education. But how much more education are you providing? What goes into your curriculum that's different from mine? And I know this like the back of my hand, so I can look at their curriculum, I can flip through it, and I can know exactly what's going on and what's being taught. And that's exactly what I did. I flipped through it. It took me 5 minutes to figure out nothing is different. Money.
So we're doing
Title.
Half chapter.
How often do you go to class? Once a week? How often do you stay in class? An hour? So like, I mean, it's crazy, but yes. You do one class a week, 1 hour at a time. And even, you know, I can condense this class in a shorter time period. I don't want to fry you guys, but I'm just saying like, there's schools out there that offer a class in a week even. And I just don't do it because at the end of the class, most students are just like, very like, okay, what did I learn? Yeah, it's a full day. It's like 4 hours, or 5 hours, and then lunch break in between, and you come back, you're eating a big lunch, and you're like, I don't want to learn anything, I want to take a nap. We have more to learn today. It's just like, there's people like that need to get their license in a very tight cram, but just take an online class if that's the case. If it's self-paced, then you can just stay up all day and all night and knock it out as quickly as possible. That's my philosophy at least, but maybe I'll put that on the website. If you're looking for a 1-week class, take an online class. Maybe I'll make a video about it or something. Put it on the website. But yeah. Yeah, it's a lot of time. We just don't do that. So, I mean, good for them. If if that's what they want to do, I mean, it's not something I I don't agree either, because the longer the hours, the less you're going to be able to focus. And it's just, you know it, like, anybody have kids?
I mean,
Okay, have you ever tried to teach your kids? Have you ever tried to teach your kids and sit as a parent and teach them? What's their attention span? I mean, it's like, we're not that far off, okay?
Right.
So let's move on. Commission's general powers and duties. Let's talk about this. They're divided into 3 areas of responsibility. Executive means they have control over your license. We actually mentioned that. FREC has control over your license, but that falls under this authority: executive power, executive authority. Control over your license, right? And what confirms that? We'll look on the bullet points. They foster education of applicants and licensees. You have to meet certain requirements to get a license or to renew your license. That's what they're saying. They adopt a seal, okay? That doesn't mean they adopt a baby seal from SeaWorld. Adopt a seal means if they have to make a final order against the licensee, a final decision against the licensee, they use a stamp, a seal. A seal is a stamp. It's a FREC stamp that represents all of them and the final decision that they make. And they establish fees. So you can thank them for the fact that the fees that you pay are the lowest it's ever been. Historically, they keep on dropping the fees, renewal and also application fees, which is a beautiful thing. When I got my license, several $100s, not the case anymore. To apply, it's not several hundred, it's like $40. To renew your license, just as cheap. More people have a license now. They're still getting the same amount, which is enough for them to function, because there's more licensees that are paying in. More as population increases, more people want to get into the real estate industry, especially Florida, where the most moved to state in the nation. And then when you move to the state of Florida, maybe you want to do real estate on the side, supplement your income. And if that's the case, more people are paying in. So it's not a big money grab for them. They're just thinking we need enough to pay for operations. And if they have a surplus every single year, they're like, okay, we could drop the fees. Because either you spend the surplus or you don't get it the next year around. And if you can't justify spending it, then they say, okay, you got to cut the costs. That's oversight and checks and balances. On page 50, quasi-legislative. What does quasi mean? Do you know? Yeah, it means kind of, almost, sort of. What does legislative mean? They can make laws. So write that down. They can kind of make laws. FREC can kind of make laws. But what laws specifically? Chapter what? Yes, which is chapter what? 475 of the Florida statutes. Florida real estate license law, not criminal law. Laws that pertain to your license. And you'll see why that's important. They create and pass rules and regulations, bylaws. They regulate professional practices based on those laws. And then we come to quasi what? Or quasi judicial. Quasi or quasi means kind of, not Quasimodo, right? Not the Hunchback. But it means kind of. And judicial means, I'll simplify, they can judge you. They can kind of judge you. So what authority is FREC limited to? Anything that has to do with your what? Look up here. Your license, which is what type of matters? Starts with an A. We saw it last unit. Administrative matters, which is license. So can they grant you a license, award you a license? Yes. Can they deny you from getting a license? Yes. Can they suspend, revoke your license? Impose fines? Administrative, yeah. License fines. You have to pay to continue in the business. Of course, yeah. And we'll talk about reasoning in Unit 6. Unit 6 is all about causation that results in penalties. Violations that could result in penalties. And they make determinations based on those violations. Let's move on. By the way, there's a term back here, promulgate. You'll see it on line 6. You got to know that term. Promulgate means to adopt the rules, to enact. You'll see that for your homework tonight. Yes. Go to page 51. Now we're going to completely change subjects and talk about something a little bit more light, which is license renewal periods. You had questions about this. When I pass a state exam, when will that license expire? How quickly do I have to get the 45 hours done? I think you should probably ask in a different way. How soon should I get it done? And I said immediately, but you do have a cutoff point. We'll talk about that. No matter who you are, if you have a real estate license in the state of Florida, your license will expire on one of two dates. There's only two expiration dates that could exist for you as a real estate licensee. And you'll see that in front of us. It's on line 4. Either March what? 31st or September 30th. My goal is to show you when your license will expire, which one of those two dates. And it's based on when you pass the state exam to figure it out. Before I show you the shortcut, because there's a simple way to figure it out, I want to show you the rule. The rule is this. Your initial license, look on line 7. What's your initial license? I'm simplifying it. What's your initial license? The first one, when you pass the state exam and that license is emailed to you, yes, it will have an expiration date on it. That license is good for at least how many months? But cannot go over 24 months. Well, I'm going to show you. Remember this rule, though. That initial license, when you pass the state exam and that license is given to you, that license will be good, valid, for at least, and cannot go over. Otherwise, your license is, thank you. Okay, we'll come back to that. I'll show you why. Now I want to show you how it works. I'm going to give you some examples up here on a separate sheet of paper, or if you have some space in the margin, I'm going to give you several dates, and I'll show you based on that date, you pass your state exam, what your first expiration is going to be. Before that, write down the two expiration dates. You can only have these two, either March 31st or September 30th. So we know that, write it down separately, remember it. But let's just say you pass your state exam. I'll use my first son's birth date, August 13th. And the year 2025. When would that license expire? This may be a question on your exam. We'll look up here. I'll give you a simple way to figure it out. It's very easy, and you'll get the hang of it as we go through examples. Look up here. It's got to be one of these two choices, no matter what, right? No matter what. Those are the only two options, correct? Yes? Confirmation? Yes. Okay, great. But out of these two choices, what's the closest we can get to August 13th out of these two options without going past? What's the closest we can get to August 13th out of these two options without going past?
March 31st.
March 31st.
Why can't you choose September? Because
September is after all.
So it's March 31st, and of what year? 2027. 18 to 24 months, right?
Wait, what do you mean by it's?
Beyond the date after. Is September 30th after August 13th? Yes, it is. So you can't choose that.
Oh, so it has to be the day before.
It has to be the date before. Okay, I'll show you again with several examples. You get the hang of it. So check it out. No matter what, you can always check your work. Does this time period fall between 18 to 24 months? The answer is yes. So you can always check it just in case. But let me give you another example. Let's say you pass your state exam on my birth date, I'm still accepting gifts.
My
Just in
birthday
case
is
you're
November
interested.
15th,
Your birthday is November 15th.
1988. Jaleesa.
Jaleesa.
Yes.
Okay. That's awesome. Scorpio.
Very much so.
Cut from the same. I love it. That's a really great date. And you said 1988, right?
Yep, 88. Yep.
That's awesome. That's only happened in class one other time.
Wait, what year are you?
TBD.
Oh, okay. Okay, to be
All right. Let's say November 15th, 2024. I'm just going to make it up. When would that license expire? Well, it can only be these two options up here, right? What's the closest we can get to November 15th without going past?
September 30th.
September 30th. And of what year? Yes. Okay. You're getting the hang of it. The next option, let's say you pass your state exam on on September 29th, 2025. When would that license expire? The closest we can get to this date without going past? Yes. It would be March 30th. Why can't we choose September 30th? 2027. Why can't we do that? You go over 2 years by 1 day and your license will be null and void. And you have to start all over again. So yes, it would be March 31st of 2027. Last example, let's say you pass your state exam on my son's birthday, March 6th. And let's say the year 2025. That could be a possibility. Well, I mean, not quite for you guys, but you get what I'm saying. What would be your expiration date? What's the closest we can get to March 6th without going past? You have to use September 30th, but of what year? Yes, because if you choose 2027, you'd go over 24 months. Add it up, you'll find out. So yes, that would be the correct time frame.
Past 4 months, then it's valid, right? So it has to be, that's in 24 months. So you just do the math.
I like this way. I've explored other ways. I know what you're talking about. If that works for you, use it. Okay. However, I think this way it's just easier for most people to digest, not taking anything away from it. But let me share something with you. And let's see if you're paying attention. I'm going to test you. What class are you required to take from the date you pass your state exam to your first expiration date? Yes, the 45-hour post-license course. Okay, let me ask you another question. What's your next expiration date going to be? This is easy. Pay attention. I'll make it simple. It's going to be every 2 years on the same date. Exactly 2 years later.
It's gonna be September.
So it'll be September 30th, 2028. What would be the next expiration date? September 30th, 2030. Every 2 years, right? Now let me ask you a question. What class would have to be done between these two dates? Yes, you'd have to complete your CE, continuing education, every 2 years, which is 14 hours. Every 2 years, within every 2 years.
So for us, we got lucky because if we get our license
After, it's in April, then you have closer to the 2 year mark.
20, no, 20,
But if you get your license before the end of March, then your license might expire sooner, closer to the 18-month mark. I know what you're talking about. So yeah, I'm glad you're paying attention to that because some people are strategic with it, but it shouldn't bother you because of this. When are you going to do your 45-hour post-license class?
As soon as possible.
You're not going to wait till the last minute anyway. So if you follow that advice and you will thank me later on, then you'll be in a great position. So check it out. Now let's move on to the question you had before. Kene had this question. He said, can I pay my renewal fee right afterwards, after I complete the class? No. The state will not accept renewal fees early. You could do education early with us. We submit your hours. Stays on file. You pay your renewal fee. It says it here, but let me give you the simplified explanation. Write this down. Within 90 days of your expiration date. 90 days. Sorry, I forgot to put days.
Prior. Is that right?
Yeah. Aren't we coming up to an expiration, the March 31st expiration date for basically half of real estate licensees in the state of Florida? So we're dealing with that as a real estate school. We're facilitating a lot of these renewal classes right now. The state, DeBeeper, they'll send you a notification 3 months before your license expires. They send it to the address that's on file, your email as well. They say, hey, listen, if you haven't completed your education, you better get your butt on track. That's what they say. Now you can pay us the renewal fee because you're within 3 months of your expiration date. So you can log into your account that you made when you applied for your license. And then you can click on your license and then it says renewal. You click on that and then you can pay with credit card. Pay your renewal fee is what it says. No, it's automatic. We do that. They don't need it because we already, it's a system that we have for reporting hours. Yes. It's your responsibility to pay, to take the class and also pay the renewal fee. Yes. Exactly. Yeah. There you go. Now check this out. We know already, if I can review, you're late by 1 day for your first renewal.
Well done.
Null and void. I'm going to repeat this again and again. It's for a reason. So it's ingrained in your minds and you don't mess up and wait till the last minute. But if it's not your first renewal, the question I get is, if you only had to do your CE, do they give you a break? Can you be late? The answer is yes. They do cut you some slack. And that's what we see evidence of here. Look what it says. It says if a licensee renews after the expiration date, a what? It's going to cost you more money. And what's going to happen to your license? Check this out on line 40. The license reverts automatically to what status? You're not, that means you're not active. You remember yesterday we talked about voluntary? You pass a state exam, you don't hang it with any brokerage, you're still doing your renewals, but you're basically just sitting on your license. You're not doing anything with it. Involuntary inactive is when you fail to renew on time. This status is a direct result of failing to renew on time, specifically for your 14-hour CE. Can you practice real estate, make commission when your license is anything other than active? No. Remember that. Anything other than active, unacceptable. Yes.
Stop. Say, oh, yeah.
Yeah, you can stop working for a brokerage company. You still have to do your renewals with us, but you can choose not to practice real estate. That's fine. But then once you decide you want to start participating in real estate services, make money, commissions, you just hang it with the brokerage again and become active. So that's what they're describing.
It's not like they just,
It's not like they're losing their license and then they could just magically get it back.
but it's not like they didn't renew it. Whatever.
No, they still have to stay up to date with their renewals. No, as long as they want.
certain amount of days. We were supposed to renew it.
We'll talk about it. It's a good question. There's only one group that receives an exception to the rule, to be late, and it's acceptable. It's who? Military. If you're serving our country, you don't have to renew your real estate license. You're serving our country. But once you are discharged, you have within how much time to take care of it? 2 years.
I saw a point. It's about the involuntary inactive status.
Yes.
Can I say something about that? Because.
No, it's right here. Look, we haven't talked about it yet. Look, check this out up here. Voluntary and involuntary inactive. We're going to talk about it again.
Okay.
No worries. I got you. Don't worry.
Had to be under a broker, right?
If you want to be active, you must do so by hanging your license with a brokerage or an owner developer. Well, if you want to make commission. I mean, some people in the military, even though they're active, they're still supplementing their income and doing real estate on the side. Especially because all of their military buddies, they're buying property. They're like, okay, well, they're buying property. I might as well be the one to help them out. So they do it on the side. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. Oh, the name of the speaker. You'll find this interesting. I want to know if you know him. Rotary Club of Winter Park. His name is right here. You know this guy? He goes by Navy Bob.
Oh, I've heard of that.
You've heard of Navy Bob?
Yeah.
This is the guy that spoke.
Yeah, I've seen videos of him,
Yeah,
but
it's probably on training videos because he had the #1 ship for several years in a row. But anyhow, yeah, yes, question. All right, let's continue. What's the only acceptable status to provide real estate services for compensation? Yeah, that's it. We know how to do it, right? Finding the employer, register with the beeper. Any questions about that? Okay, but then we come across inactive, but there's two types. Voluntary, which we already know. You're sitting on your license, correct? Any questions about that? And then we come across involuntary inactive. Look up here on line 34. It's when a licensee fails to what? Renew. Remember that. Involuntary inactive is when a licensee fails to renew. That's when this status occurs. But not for your first renewal. It says other than the what? First renewal, line 35. We're talking about your CE, correct? But you might be curious. How long could it be late before it's gone? That's what we see in front of us on these bullet points. If you're late, that means involuntary inactive, for your CE by 12 months or what? Or less. What must you complete to get back on track? Complete your 14 hours with us, pay your renewal fee, and they're going to charge you a what fee? Bingo. But what if you go over how many months? But you're still less than 2 years past the expiration date. I'm going to simplify this for you. I want you to write this down so you understand the commitment you must make if you fall in this circumstance. They essentially double everything. Instead of 14 hours, what's double? What's double? 28 hour. Yep. Double your renewal fees, double your late fees, double everything. But your license is not gone yet. Let me ask you a question though. What if you go over 2 years involuntary inactive late? Now your license becomes null and void and you must start all over again. Don't they give you plenty of time? They gave you 2 years to do your 14 hours and then an additional 2 years past the expiration date before it's gone. Plenty of time. Question. I don't know what it is now. I mean, I'm pretty sure you're not going to end up in that circumstance. But when you do end up in that circumstance, I'm not saying you will, I'm just joking with you. But if you do, you'll find out. And fees change. So I could tell you something now, it could change tomorrow.
I think there is some circumstances that change those things. Imagine you are in coma.
Yeah, right here, look.
I'm sorry.
When would they reinstate a null and void license? Well, if you can prove physical hardship, you're in a coma, or economic hardship, you couldn't afford to do it, but you'd have to prove it. Bankrupt, you don't have any money, but you still want to like keep the license, you can contact them and they'll help you out. Yeah. But then we come across other license classifications, null and void. We know about null and void. The license essentially no longer exists if it's null and void. When could that happen? Well, it's these bullet points. We just got done talking about this one. Look, if you're involuntary inactive for more than how many years? 2 years. If your license is revoked, revocation. And by the way, I want to tell you this. Remember FREC. FREC has the authority to revoke your license, right? They have control over your license. But revocation is the most severe penalty that they can impose against you. Most severe. So if they take away your license, revoke it, it's due to disciplinary action and it's permanent. That means you can never get a license again in the state of Florida. Michael, what if you want to get a license in another state? Could it prevent you from getting a license in another state? Potentially. Because when you submit the application for the other state, they're going to ask you. And if you lie, they'll find out. Every state communicates and connects. They know. Disciplinary action is recorded nationwide. If you are late by 1 day for your first renewal, post-license, null and void. We talked about that. And then if you voluntarily give up your license, like you cancel it or you turn it over to the state because you no longer wish to practice, like somebody retiring. It's rare that somebody does that. Most people that retire just let the license what? They let it expire, right? But just in case, this is an option. And then that license would be null and void if you turn it back over to the state. Any questions here? What about this status? We're almost done with this unit, by the way. Bear with me. Cease to be in what? I want you to write this down. Because we learned about involuntary inactive, right? When does involuntary inactive status happen? When you fail to what? Renew on time. Cease to be in force. What happened when you fail to, write this down. When you fail to what? To notify FREC or DBEPR on time. So you're probably wondering, when would you have to notify DBEPR or FREC? Well, look on the bullet points. And you'll even see above that, it says DBEPR would have to be notified within 10 days of the following actions. Change of address, change of employer, same thing for sales associates, as it is for brokers. Broker changes their business address, they got to notify. The associate changes their personal address, they got to notify. And if they don't, and DBEPR finds out they didn't do it on time, what's going to be their status? It's here in front of us. Cease to be enforced. Can you practice real estate while your license ceases to be enforced? No.
No.
Can you make commissions? No. Question. What was that? Well, imagine you change your address, your mailing address. You have to keep your mailing address current. Go to the next page, you'll see it. Mailing addresses need to be current for license purposes. You're going to provide 2 addresses when you apply. You're going to provide your physical address where you reside, and you're going to provide a mailing address if you want to receive mail at some other location. For instance, is a P.O. box considered to be an acceptable address? Look, line 35, yes, it is. But if that address changes, do you have to inform? Do you have to notify? Yes, you do. Within how many days? 10 days of your change of mailing address, email address even. Do you see that? Because I have to have some way of getting in touch with you. What about for disciplinary action? What if you're involved in a disciplinary matter? What if you're involved in a potential lawsuit? What if you have to notify you for license renewal or something happens with your license? They got to get in touch with you. And if they can't, and they find out you didn't notify them within the correct time, cease to be in and may issue how much of a citation? $1,000 fine, which is double as to what it used to be. It used to be 500, now it's 1,000.
So you pass 10 days, but they can't find out the past 10 days of moving.
Can they? You were asking all, don't have that mindset, okay? Just, yes. La, 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 okay. How are they going to find out? That's not the right mindset. The mindset is, I know the rule now and I have to comply. Otherwise, my license is going to be jeopardized. Because if you play that game on your exam, you're going to fail that question. Oh, like maybe the answer says, if they don't find out in time, and you're like, oh, that was what I was thinking about in class, I'm going to select that one. They didn't find out, so I guess it's no harm, no foul. No, you know the rule and you have to comply, yes. Yeah. If I change my address, yeah, I got to inform them.
You do that, or we have.
No, I have to do that.
Oh.
That's for me individually. Sales associates have their own things they have to notify of. Like if you change your name, you get married, you change your name, would you have to notify the state?
Yes.
Yeah. So change of name, change of address, circumstances cause changes in our life, and we have to notify the state of these changes. No, that's the broker's responsibility. You have your own set of responsibilities is what I'm saying. If it's matters that have to do with you as an individual licensee, yes. But if it's the broker's address, that has nothing to do with you. Physical address. I know there's another one I'm not thinking of, but oh yeah, change of residency as well. But if you move out of state, you're probably going to change your mailing address as well, right? But we're going to talk about that. That's on the next page. I just want to be clear on something real quick. You're probably thinking, okay, another date I have to remember, but this date is easy to remember. Why? Because, for instance, if you change your address in real life, who do you have to notify of change of address? DMV. Of course. The DMV. You have to update your license. And guess what? The time period is the same. It's the same. You have to update with the DMV within 10 days. And if you get pulled over, the police officer is going to ask you for license registration. They might look at your driver's license and ask you, is this your current address? Have you ever had that question before? I've had that question. If you say anything other than yes, what's the follow-up question? How long ago did you move, right? If it's anything longer than 10 days, they can't wait to write you a ticket for that, which is almost a $200 ticket. So, yeah, let's give you a heads up on that. Now you know. Yeah, you just go into your account. Everything is digital now. It's not like back in the day when I had to submit a physical form and sign it and a live signature, and it was a whole headache. But now, and it costs money. It costs postage. Now it's digital. It doesn't cost any money to update this information. For a driver's license, yeah. La 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 la. Okay. Go to page 55. Change it. I'm not gonna rat you out, but get it updated. Especially for that one. You don't want to mess up that one, right? Okay, so on page 55, what if you move out of the state, you become a non-resident? Do you have to notify somebody for license matters? Yes, but it tells you right here. It says you have to notify who? The commission. Who's the commission? FREC. Within how many days? 60 days. And you'll see that confirmed here. If you don't, within that time period, can they fine you? How much?
600.
$600 for not updating the commission of change of residency. Used to be 300. Now it's 600. Don't mess around. They want to catch you. And yes, to confirm, everything can be done on your license portal. That's on their website electronically. At the bottom of page 56, let's talk about something brief here. Change of what? You leave one to work for another. Is there a notification required with that? Yes, of course. What about your business that you brought to that brokerage company? Can you take your business with you? Can you take your listings with you? If you brought, imagine you have pending deals. Can you take those pending deals with you? No.
No.
It's not your business. It's the brokerage company's business. Therefore, any money made off that business is the brokerage company's money. Refer to your employment contract if you're thinking otherwise. But just to be clear, this is how it works traditionally. Let's talk about fiduciary duties. Do you have a fiduciary relationship with your employer? I'm asking you. With your employing broker, are you in alliance with one another? Yes, you are. It's one of the examples we talked about earlier. But the question I have for you is, does fiduciary end when you switch employers?
Yes.
Do you still have fiduciary with your previous employer if you switch to another one? The answer is, in our business, yes. But it doesn't mean you're going to continue to bring business to your previous employer. It just means you're not going to slander them, badmouth them, spread negative rumors about them, steal confidential information, steal trade secrets from them, take documents from the brokerage office because they have to maintain it for how long? 5 years.
Yeah.
That's what we're referring to. Does that make sense? That's what we
Yeah.
see continuing on to the next page. What I just mentioned to you, breach of liability, or it says liability of breach of the fiduciary relationship. So now you know how to comply, right? You still have allegiance with your former employer to that degree. Confidential information, not diverting clients. You'll see that here. Not to divert buyers and sellers. It's all stuff we already talked about. Question. You can't. Cannot. They're not yours. Now, here's the question. I know you're maybe struggling with that, but I can enlighten you a little bit. Can you inform your current buyers and sellers, owners, renters you're working with that you're no longer working for ABC Realty, now you're working for XYZ Realty? Can you inform them of this? Yes. That's professional courtesy. Can you persuade them to follow you? No. If they want to do so at their own will, can they do so? Depending on how their contract is structured, if they're able to terminate and move for other representation, that's based on their agreement. So if you brought your best friend over to that brokerage company because you're working there, but now you want to switch, you think your friend is going to stay with that brokerage company? The only reason why they're there is because you're there. So if you leave, they're probably going to want to follow you, but they have to comply with their contractual obligation. If they're able to terminate and follow you, great. And our last subject of this unit, yes, our last subject, multiple and group licenses. So what is a multiple license? This is only for a broker, a real estate broker. A sales associate, and you'll actually see this on the next page, It says, because, look on line 4, on line, page 58, line 4. Because sales and broker associates may have only one registered employer at any given time, associates may not hold what? So once again, this is only for who? A broker. So now go back, page 57, line 14. Multiple licenses are issued to a broker who qualifies as a broker for more than one brokerage or business entity. Yeah, let me explain. I'm a broker. If you decide to become a broker, you can accomplish the same, what I'm about to mention to you. I have my broker's license. So it'd be Michael Cameron Sadawi, real estate broker. That's one license I have. I have another license for my brokerage entity, Cameron Realty. I have a license issued for that because I want to operate my brokerage company under an LLC, for instance. I don't want to operate the business under my personal name. I want to claim all the wonderful tax deductions and reduce my liability. So I operate under a LLC. So I have a license for that, all through DeBeeper. Okay. Also, my office. Remember, all brokerages have to have an office. All active brokers are required to have an office. I have a license issued for my office as well by DeBeeper. So that's 3 licenses already. I also have a property management company, and that's under a separate entity, and I have a license issued for that. You see, I'm talking about multiple licenses. I can be a broker for my own company, and another brokerage company can hire me to be a qualifying broker for their company. Imagine if there's a company based out of New York, real estate company, but they want to open up offices in Florida. But they don't want to go through the headache of getting a license and all of this stuff and going through all the qualifications. We know how long it takes to become a broker. They can open up a business here. They can hire me as their qualifying broker, and I can legitimize their business for them to have operations in Florida. Only brokers can do that. Associates cannot. So I'm describing that brokers can have multiple licenses for that reason. Associates cannot. As an associate, which you are soon to be, you can only be issued one license in your legal name. Okay? So Caroline, last name, licensed sales associate. That's all you get for now as a sales associate until you decide to become a broker in the future. Then you can have multiple licenses. You understand? I'm not talking about an MLO license. I'm talking about real estate license. Okay? I'm not talking about getting a CDL license. I'm talking about real estate license. You can only have one real estate license as a sales associate. You understand?
About mortgage.
Yeah.
About mortgage.
Mortgage is a completely separate industry and license. Huh?
Insurance.
Insurance. That's a completely separate license. Has nothing to do with real estate. They're separate industries, separate licenses. So for real estate, being in the real estate business, you can only have the one license issued in your personal, your legal name as a sales associate. Once you become a broker, then you can have multiple licenses in real estate for your property management company, for your brokerage company, for multiple offices, for working for other companies.
Talk about the second we talk about the license.
The what? Well, there was sales associate, broker associate, and real estate broker. Are you talking about those from yesterday? Yeah. We know what it takes to become a broker. As a sales associate, you have to at least complete your first renewal, complete additional education, and you have to have 2 years experience active. You can get the broker's license when you pass a state exam, right? But what if you're not ready to open up your own office? You can downgrade to a broker associate. So those were the 3. Now, group license, which you're going to be tested on. This is for you as an associate. This is for you. I'm going to read this out to you because it will make sense. And then I'll give you an explanation, an example. Group license is sometimes issued to associates who are registered under a what? Nope. You remember owner developers? They develop, they build it themselves, and then they sell their own inventory, for instance, like major home builder, timeshare company. An owner developer may own properties in names of various entities. Think about it. Give me a name of a major home builder. Lennar? Is that a good example? So you got Lennar Homes International. But then all of the subdivisions, communities that they build are under their own LLC, their own business entity. They do this for a couple of reasons. They do it to reduce liability. Yeah, so it'd be like Lennar Homes at Lake Nona, LLC. Lennar Homes at Winter Garden, LLC. They're under their own business entities because if there's a class action lawsuit against the developer for bad construction, it doesn't affect all of their other businesses, their other subdivisions, or the parent company. So you have the parent company, Lennar Homes International Incorporated, and then you have all the LLCs, the subdivisions, the developments that they're creating beneath that. So what does that mean for you as an associate working for Lennar Homes International, for instance? Exactly. And that's what you're going to be tested on here. The group license allows the associate to sell for all of the affiliated entities of the owner developer in Florida, because you have a Florida real estate license. If you want to sell for another state and make commission, then you need a license in that state. You understand? So they have developments all over. Even though they're under different business names, they're still connected under the same umbrella, and they allow you under this group license status to sell for all of those entities, all of those developments, all of those projects. Same thing with timeshare, like Westgate. You mentioned Westgate, right? Or somebody else. Your friend, Amir? Huh? Yeah, same thing. Yeah, like Westgate, they have 3 locations in Central Florida. They have the Lakes, the Palace, and the Villas, for instance. So they put you on a status, you can sell for all 3 at the same time. Any questions? Not out of state, you can't be involved in it directly, but you can refer and make a referral fee. But remember, if you're not licensed in that state, you can't sell and make commission in that state. You can't be in charge of that transaction. Somebody who's licensed in that state can be in charge, but you can have a referral agreement with them. They do the work and you get a little split. But any money received off of referrals, even out-of-state referrals, has to go through who? The broker. And your broker is entitled to taking their split or cut, whatever that split is. Every brokerage company has their own splits. Ask the brokerage company and they'll be able to share that with you. Can't do that. No money could get paid to you directly. Has to be funneled through the broker. And sometimes the agreement with the brokerage says any bonuses or out-of-state referral fees, you keep it.
But it still has to go through.
Still has to go through the brokerage. So refer to your employment contract. The policy manual will dictate that. Any questions? Yes. It does make sense. It's a formality, but it makes sense. Getting any side money, cutting the broker out of their entitled commission split. Broker has to keep the lights on. And if you're doing business, the only way you're allowed to do business is by being active with the broker. The broker is giving you a platform to make money. So if they have to keep the lights on, but you're doing all the side dealing and funneling money away from the brokerage company, not so good. But here's the thing, if you didn't like that split from the very beginning, why did you decide to work for that brokerage? If you were looking for more money and trying to do side deals, just find a brokerage that has a compensation plan that you like. And before you hang your license with them, they tell you. They don't hide any of this. And make sure to ask. Like, I'm going to try to get, I didn't ask him yet, but I'm going to try to get Ryan to share information, and then you can just ask him whatever you want. Ask him what his brokerage company offers as their split. Put him on the spot. Because this is like a mock interview. You're going to interview them just as much as they're interviewing you. And I'm going to tell you this because it's important for you to hear. You are easy to hire. Think about the requirements to get a real estate license. You have to clear a level 2 background check, FBI, FDLE, make sure you're not a wanted criminal. So that's not something that the employer has to do or worry about. And you just pass a state exam based on your competence, knowledge of real estate license law, procedures, rules. So it's like, okay, so they proved, I don't have to give them another assessment. They prove they understand the state laws and they understand how the real estate business works. They pass the state exam and they clear a background check. Are they going to get a P sample from you? Probably not. You understand what I'm saying? Maybe that went over your head. Like, they're not going to test you for drugs, is what I'm saying. But it's easy to hire you. So it's just really your passion that you have to sell yourself in the interview and say, hey, listen, most brokers want to hear that you want to do it full time. Most brokers. Even Orion will admit that to you. He wants full-time agents. He wants people that like are going to breathe this stuff because he doesn't expect things from people that he hasn't gone through himself. And he'll tell you, hopefully, his testimonial of like his climb to success in the business. And it's amazing. And when he talks about the numbers, which are real numbers, and it's like, I know his story, I know his background. It's like, it's amazing what you can accomplish, but with the right dedication. So if you're not dedicated to it, maybe he's going to be more picky. I know he does have a referral side of the business where he's like, listen, if you absolutely just want to be a referral agent, I can put you in this thing called the referral team. We'll team you up with one of our agents that's doing the work full time. You just refer business to them and they'll give you a little, like 20% or whatever it is. So you just refer friends, family, whatever, whenever you come across a deal, you have your license active with them. They do the work, they give you a little piece until you're ready to transition full time. Any questions? Yes. Okay, so the question, just in case you're listening online, is why would the broker care if you're full time or not? What's the brokerage company's goal? They want to expand. They want to grow. The only way to do so is with warm bodies, highly motivated, passionate individuals that want to be in this business and will give it their all and be reliable. Not like, hey, listen, if I make you active with my brokerage company and you haven't shared with me that you're trying to do this full time, you're not all in on it, but I put you in a system where I send you leads. Those leads are a waste. Who pays for those leads? Well, I do as the broker. So I'm entrusting that you're going to take this lead and convert it to a sale, but that's not your objective. You just are kind of floating along. I'm not saying you, I'm just giving you an example. The broker, the only way they can grow is with a team that's strong and motivated. It's what it comes down to. And those agents are put on a pedestal. And they have perks and opportunities that arise if you go all in on this. So have I seen those 180 success stories where people are just, they're trying to figure out what they want to do in life and they decided to give real estate a try and then they go all in on it and have completely dominated in the market? I've seen that. But it's really up to you. What do you do on a daily basis? Where are you going to get your business from? You got to think about that. Where are you going to get your business from? Friends, family? Okay, that's a small fraction of it. Well, you got to generate leads. How are you going to generate leads? What are you going to do during the day to generate leads? This is what brokers want to hear. They want to know that you're thinking about that stuff because when they bring you on a team, you're ready to rock and roll. Anyhow, any questions about that? Does that answer your question? Yes. I don't want to put an hour on it, a number of hours, because you're going to dictate what that means to you.
Dedication and consistency.
You can do a lot in a very short time period. How efficient are you? What things are you working on in that short time period? Maybe you only work 2 hours a day, but for the full 2 hours, you're calling one person after another, after another, after another to try to convert leads. And I can almost guarantee if you're dedicating 2 hours a day to hitting the phones, 2 hours a day to knocking on doors, having conversations with people, you're going to be successful. But it's just the consistent part of it. So anyhow, what the good thing about, okay, I don't know if every broker does this, but good thing about what he does, what I know he shared this in the past, he puts together a game plan based on your life's circumstance. So he'll sit with you one-on-one and he'll say, okay, are you all in or are you transitioning out of something? And he won't turn you away if you're transitioning out of one career and trying to go into real estate full-time, but he'll say, okay, do you want to go full-time? All right, if so, what are you doing during the day? When you're done doing lashes, for instance, how are you utilizing the rest of that time? Are you sending emails? Are you making phone calls? And then he'll put together a game plan. If you do this, I know this is the result because I have a proven track record that this is the result. So he's backing it up by data. And then you can actually execute. But he'll know if you're lying because most brokers will if they have a good system.
Just get it, stay, survive. I think so. Because imagine if I get my license today and that's my only job.
I beg to differ. I've seen so many walks of life. I've seen people that save up 6 months of income just so they can transition into real estate full time. Or they're just kind of figuring out. Maybe they're staying at a friend's house. Maybe they're back at mom and dad's. Maybe it doesn't matter. Everybody's situation is different. You got to figure out what works for you. So hopefully that is some advice that you can take with you and utilize. It just comes from experience. But if you have any questions for me, anybody have any questions online? No? Yes? Okay, what are we doing tonight? Of course, but
3 and 4.
what specific
questions?
Yes. It's the unit exams at the end of units 3 and 4. This should be a challenge for you every single night. There's no excuse. We got done early, didn't we?
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, we're done. We're done with our session for tonight. But your obligation is homework, right? Do those questions. Units 3 and 4 questions. Be prepared for tomorrow. I'm still going to give you the full amount of credit. That's what I do. Okay? Because we were efficient with our time. And you notice we do short working breaks. I don't do those long drawn out breaks that a lot of schools do where 30, 45 minutes, hour, you come back and you don't want to learn anything. It's like, no, we do efficient working breaks. You come back with energy. We knock it out. And sometimes we get done early. You're still going to get the full amount of credit. Sound good? All right. Put you in your chairs, clean up your mess, drive safe. God bless. I will see you mañana.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Crystal Rivera, and I'm a realtor with Live Realty at Nona. I decided to be a real estate agent for my love of helping others, thinking about helping them with their first home, with their first apartment, with their first investment property. Flipping homes is what started me in the business. My husband is into flipping homes, so I went from nursing, which I'm still currently doing, but now going into real estate. Decided to use Cameron Academy because of my nursing schedule and how their schedule works well with my schedule. Did not expect to be prepared as I was. Michael was amazing. He prepared me in 2 weeks to take the test, literally 5 days after I completed the class. And 3 days after that, I was already signed with Live Realty. And here we are 5 weeks later, and I have my first listing. So definitely prepared me well for the real estate industry and just all that's to come. I'm excited, and I wish everybody luck.
Hey, my name's Jonathan Gibson. I am from Orlando, Florida. I had started my career in real estate based on wanting to. I started out my journey in real estate with Camera Academy because I read a lot of online reviews and there were exceptional reviews about Cameron. When I got here, I wasn't disappointed at all. I realized Michael was the best teacher and he helped me learn everything I needed to know about real estate. And he's a very good instructor. He's thorough. He tells everything. He's one of the better professors. He's good at explaining stuff, helping you get through this and making it easy for everything. And I wanted to do real estate because I read some books and I bought homes and I wanted to start renting out my property. And I know we had, based on my research online from Google and everything, I knew I had to do a school for Florida and do the 63-hour course. And I looked it up, came to Camera Academy. It's been the best thing ever. He's helped us with connections. He's brought in different realtors and brokers, plus find work after the academy. So if you're wanting to learn anything about real estate, I would definitely recommend Camera Academy.
Hi, my name is Tamara Fletcher, and I have experience in education. I've worked in education for over 17 years, but I always wanted to get into real estate. I wanted to get into real estate because I love a couple of things. I love people, I love making money, and I love being able to sell homes, or at least the potential of selling homes. I love real estate. That's what brought me to Cameron Academy. Cameron Academy has done so much for me. I have learned so much from Michael. The information that I've gained here has made me feel so prepared for the state exam as well as the exam at the end of the course. I can't go on enough about how enthusiastic Michael was during the whole process of learning and how that really made a difference in the way that I learn. Being able to be here in person and take the in-person classes is what has really made it all the difference in the world. Michael is a great instructor. I saw great reviews about him and his instruction here at Cameron Academy. And I am really happy to say that all of those positive reviews are true, 1,000%. It's made a world of difference for me. And if I could do it again, I would.
My name is Gabriel Minyarji. I've been in the restaurant industry for the past 25 years, now getting the residential investment opportunity. I found Cameron Academy to be very helpful in my new endeavor. Michael Cameron has been very, very helpful, knowledgeable, provided very new and efficient information to help me endeavor my career. I'm very, very pleased and satisfied that I found Cameron Academy and the knowledge that I gained from them, and for all my future endeavors. I highly, highly, highly recommend them. I definitely give them a 5-star plus.
My name is Dennis Duane. I came to the Cameron Academy. My mentor, he also he told me go directly to Cameron Academy. They are very, very good, and that's how he got his license. And he advised me to go to that school. And when I came, so far, it was the best decision that I made. The instructor Michael was very, very good. He's very good, and it would benefit me. Very knowledgeable. I want to say thank you to him. And I think I will pass because of him. I will pass both school exam and the state exam. So it was the best decision that I made. Michael was very good, and I want to say thank you to him. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Samuel Ramirez. I'm an electrician. I got into real estate to get into my own deals and to see if I can sell some real estate for commission on the sides. Cameron Academy taught me a lot of things. It taught me different things that I didn't know about real estate. It cleared up some misconceptions that I had. Michael was a great teacher. He taught me a lot about real estate that I didn't know, and it just opened my eyes a lot more and made me just very motivated to get into this. And I think anyone should go to Cameron Academy.
Mi nombre es Rolly Peralta y acabo de terminar las clases aquí en la Academia Cameron con el profesor Michael. He aprendido mucho y estoy muy agradecido con Michael por todo lo que me ha enseñado. Yo quiero ser un real estate agent para seguir invirtiendo en el futuro y también ayudar a algunas familias a a adquirir sus sueños. Estoy muy agradecido con Michael y invito a todas las personas a venir a esta academia.
大家好，我叫 Rudy 我很开心能够跟 Michael 上学，因为他在real estate 这方面学到了给我很多知识。我也很开心能够选到他，因为不是每个人都可以教你，他能够教你的东西。他有很多的实力，有很多的经验，而且很风趣，所以对于我来讲是一件非常幸运的事情。那我个人想做房地产投资，所以我必须要有最专业的知识去帮助我自己。很幸运的能够选到 Michael， 所以我希望大家以后能够给他一个机会去跟他做投资，不会让你丢钱，这个很重要。所以祝你们好运，希望能以后见到你们，谢谢，拜拜。